She married a monster, but they never saw her coming. The bustling city skyline of Metropolitan Heights, New York, sliced through the gray morning like a jagged wave. It was there, in a tiny apartment on the 18th floor of a downtown building, that Eleanor Vance gazed out at the concrete jungle. It wasn't a good day for goodbyes, but life rarely consults the calendar of our tragedies. Her phone rang for the 5th time that morning. It was him again, Julian Thorne, a name that had sounded like music 2 years ago when she still cleaned his penthouse in the exclusive Upper East Side, but now stuck in her throat like a thorn. "I want you out before the day is over," he said when she answered. His voice was metallic, devoid of emotion. "I've sent a driver. He's waiting downstairs. He'll take you wherever you want to go." "Julian, I know you're scared, but we need to talk about this." Eleanor's voice was surprisingly firm for someone who had cried all night. "I'm pregnant. They're your children." An icy silence stretched across the line before his voice returned, now sharp as broken glass. "Don't try that game with me, Eleanor. I'm not an idiot. You know very well I spend most of my time traveling. How can I be sure those children are mine?" His words struck Eleanor like a slap. She took a deep breath, her hand instinctively going to her still flat stomach. "I've never been with anyone else, and you know that." "I know? What I know is that you got what you wanted. 2 years living in an apartment I paid for without having to clean bathrooms. It was too good, wasn't it? Now, you want to secure the rest of your life." Eleanor closed her eyes as a sharp pain pierced her chest. How could he so easily forget the whispered confidences in the dim light, the promises exchanged on pillows, the "I love yous" murmured between kisses? "I never wanted your money, Julian. They all say that." His laugh was dry, humorless. "You have until the end of the day. The driver will take you wherever you want, on one condition: far away from me." The call ended. Eleanor stared at the phone, as if it could offer some answer to the collapse of her world. The city noise continued outside, indifferent. Horns, sirens, the constant bustle of millions of lives moving on while hers crumbled. The doorbell rang. It was the driver, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, who avoided looking directly at her. He waited in the hallway while Eleanor gathered the few things she owned: some clothes, a notebook with poems, a small wooden box with photographs, and the positive pregnancy test that had changed everything. She went downstairs with him to the parking lot. A black luxury sedan, tinted windows. New York City sped by on the other side of the glass. The imposing Fifth Avenue, Times Square with its dazzling billboards, the gray melancholy of that winter afternoon that seemed tailor-made for her broken heart. "Where to, ma'am?" the driver asked, breaking the silence. "Where?" The question echoed in Eleanor's mind like a cry in an abyss. She had no family in New York. Her parents had died in an accident when she was in high school, and the aunt who raised her had passed away 2 years prior. Her few friends were from Julian's circle: socialites, business moguls, models, people who surely would already be deleting her number. "You can drop me at Grand Central Station." That was all she managed to say. The driver nodded. When they arrived, he tried to hand her an envelope. "Mr. Thorne asked me to give you this." Eleanor looked at the white envelope, imagining how much her dignity was worth in Julian Thorne's estimation. "Give it back to him. Tell him I'm not for sale." The driver seemed constrained, but pocketed the envelope. As Eleanor got out of the car, with her small suitcase, he murmured something that sounded like, "Good luck, mjau," but it could have just been the wind. Grand Central was a human ant colony. People coming and going, farewell hugs, arrival smiles. Eleanor walked aimlessly among the platforms, feeling invisible amidst the chaos. She didn't have enough money to go very far. She had no plan. She sat on a cold stone bench and watched the crowd in front of her. Families, lovers, lonely people like her, people with destinations, with purpose. For the first time since she received the news of her pregnancy, Eleanor allowed herself to cry in public, silent tears streaming down her face as New York pulsed, indifferent to her pain. That's when she felt a light hand on her shoulder. She looked up, meeting the gentle face of an elderly woman, gray hair pulled back in a bun, wearing what appeared to be a simple religious habit. "Is everything all right, my dear?" The voice was soft, with a slight accent Eleanor couldn't identify. "Yes, She tried to smile, but her lips trembled. The woman sat beside her, unhurried, as if she had all the time in the world. "You know, sometimes the world seems like such a big and lonely place, doesn't it? Especially when we're carrying a weight that no one else can see." Eleanor looked at her, surprised. How could this stranger seem to understand so well what was happening in her heart? "My name is Sister Agnes. I'm returning to the St. Jude's Haven, downtown." She smiled. "If you have nowhere to go, perhaps you can join us for a warm meal." I'm pregnant." The words escaped before Eleanor could hold them back. "And alone." Sister Agnes showed no judgment, merely squeezed Eleanor's hand lightly. "Then there are 2 lives needing shelter. All the more reason to come with me." That cold winter afternoon in the city, as the sky closed in, announcing rain, Eleanor Vance allowed herself to be guided by a stranger who offered not just shelter, but something she would desperately need in the coming years: hope. St. Jude's Haven, an austere brick building nestled among modern structures in a quiet downtown neighborhood, became Eleanor's unlikely refuge. It wasn't luxurious like the apartment in the Metropolitan Tower, much less like Julian's penthouse in the Upper East Side. But there was a serenity within those thick walls that blocked the constant roar of the city. "You can stay in the back room next to the library," Sister Agnes explained, guiding her through cold floored hallways. "It's small, but it has a window that overlooks the garden. In the morning, it's the first place the sun touches." The room was, in fact, tiny. A single bed, a nightstand, a simple wardrobe, and a wooden chair by the window. But it was clean, and, as promised, the window framed a small internal garden where cherry blossom trees were beginning to bloom. "Meals are served in the kitchen. Coffee at 6, lunch at noon, dinner at 6. Ha!" The nun smiled. "We don't have rigid rules for visitors, but we appreciate collaboration in maintaining the space. Everyone contributes as they can." During the first few weeks, Eleanor spoke little. She spent hours sitting on the small stone bench in the garden, watching the birds that came to feed on the seeds the sisters scattered every morning. At night, lying in the narrow bed, she felt the first movements of the life growing inside her. It wasn't tears that visited her during those hours, but a strange sense of determination. One Sunday afternoon, when she had been at the Haven for 2 months, Eleanor found a white-haired man with a gentle smile in the library. He was organizing books, separating them by categories. "You must be Eleanor." He extended his hand. "I'm Father Michael. I come here every Thursday and Sunday for Mass, and sometimes to put this library in order. The sisters are wonderful, but organization isn't exactly their strong suit." Eleanor smiled, her first genuine smile in months. "Can I help? I like books." Father Michael looked at her for a few moments, as if evaluating something far beyond her appearance. "Of course. Can you start by separating those? Over there, by subject. Then tell me which ones caught your attention." They worked in silence for almost an hour. Eleanor felt strangely comfortable in the presence of that man who, from time to time, murmured something to himself as he examined one title or another. It was he who broke the silence. "Sister Agnes told me a little about you. She said you are intelligent and observant." He closed the book he was examining. She also mentioned that you're expecting twins. Eleanor instinctively placed her hand on her belly, now visibly protruding under her simple dress. Yes, the clinic doctor confirmed it last week. And what do you plan to do after they're born? The question took her by surprise. She hadn't thought much beyond tomorrow since arriving at the Haven. I don't know. Maybe look for a job as a domestic worker again. It's what I know how to do. Father Michael frowned. Really? And all these philosophy and literature books you separated so carefully? And the notes? What did I see you doing the other day while you were in the garden? Eleanor felt her face flush. They're just thoughts. I've always liked to read and write, but I never had a chance to study beyond high school. I needed to work. The priest nodded thoughtfully. You know, Eleanor, there are scholarships available. I know some people at NYU. If you're interested, I can make some calls. She stared at him, incredulous. University? But I'm going to have 2 babies. How could I study? With difficulty, certainly. He smiled. But wouldn't you be the first mother to go to university? And here at the Haven, I'm sure the sisters would help with the girls while you're in classes. They love babies, you know. It gives them a chance to spoil someone without sinning by favoritism. That night, Eleanor couldn't sleep. The idea of returning to study, of having a profession, a career, things she had abandoned when she fell in love with Julian and accepted the life he offered, now re-emerged as a real possibility. When day broke, she found Sister Agnes in the kitchen preparing bread. I want to accept Father Michael's offer, she said without preamble. I want to study. The nun smiled, as if she had been expecting those words. What would you like to study? Eleanor didn't hesitate. Law. I want to help people who, like me, don't know their rights and end up being manipulated by those in power. 3 months later, with her belly already huge, sheltering her daughters, Eleanor began attending night classes at NYU. During the day, she worked as an administrative assistant in a small downtown company, recommended by one of Father Michael's contacts. The salary was modest, but enough for her to start building a small savings for the girls' future. The days were exhaustive. She woke up at 5 in the morning, took 2 subways to work, went straight to the university, and returned almost at midnight, often being the last person to get off the bus that dropped her 3 blocks from the Haven. When Emma and Lily were born, on a rainy September dawn, the routine became even more challenging. The twins were small but healthy, with a blonde fuzz that left no out about who the father was. They have his eyes, Sister Dolores commented, as she helped Eleanor bathe the little ones. 3 days after giving birth, that blue as clear as a piece of sky, Eleanor observed her daughters, so similar to Julian in coloring, but with something undeniably hers in the shape of their faces, in the curve of their lips. Yes, she replied, feeling a strange mix of pain and pride. I hope they inherited only the best in him. In the following months, Eleanor developed an almost superhuman routine. The sisters took turns caring for the girls while she worked and studied. In the intervals between classes, she expressed milk that was stored in the Haven's small refrigerator. On weekends, she made up for lost time with her daughters, singing to them, reading stories, memorizing every small development. It was during this period that she began writing articles for the university newspaper, analyzing cases of discrimination and violations of labor rights. Her first article, about domestic workers living in slavery-like conditions in mansions in New York, caught the attention of professors and colleagues. In her second year of university, she got an internship at a small law firm specializing in social causes. The pay was even less than her previous job, but the experience was worth the sacrifice. Every day she faced the chaos of the city's crowded subways, often studying standing up, balancing books and notebooks as the transport swayed on the rusty tracks. On a particularly difficult afternoon, when she had just received the news that the twins had a fever at the Haven, Eleanor found herself on the crowded subway, silent tears streaming down her face as she tried to push her way out at Grand Central Station. That's when she felt someone grab her arm. "Are you all right?" It was a middle-aged woman with curly gray hair, colorful rimmed glasses, and a well-tailored suit that hinted at a high professional position. "Yes, I need to get home. My daughters are sick." The woman nodded, understanding. "Come on, I'm in the car. I can give you a ride." In normal circumstances, Eleanor would never accept a ride from a stranger, but there was something in that woman's expression that inspired confidence. "I'm Victoria Reed," she introduced herself as they walked to the parking lot. "A lawyer. I saw you the other day at the courthouse carrying a stack of files. Intern. Yes, at Mendez and Associates." Eleanor hesitated. "I'm Eleanor Vance. I'm in my 3rd year of law at NYU." Victoria smiled, opening the door of a silver Volvo. "NYU? Excellent university. Where do you live?" "At St. Jude's Haven, downtown." The lawyer raised her eyebrows, surprised, but asked no questions. During the ride, they talked about legal cases, common professors, the routine of the courts. When they arrived at the Haven, Victoria handed her a card. "If you need help, or if you're looking for a better place to do your internship, call me. We're always in need of sharp minds at our firm." Eleanor looked at the card, impressed. Victoria Reed was a founding partner of one of the most respected law firms, specializing in human rights and labor causes in New York City. "Thank you." That was all she managed to say before rushing inside, anxious to see her daughters. That night, as she rocked Emma and Lily, now fever-free thanks to the sisters' care, Eleanor contemplated Victoria's card. It was as if a door had opened, not just for a professional opportunity, but for a life she barely dared to dream of. The road would be long and arduous, but for the first time since she was expelled by Julian, Eleanor felt there was a horizon beyond daily survival. There was a future that she herself was building, brick by brick, page by page, night after night of study. Unlike what she had experienced before, this future did not depend on anyone's promises or generosity, other than her own. Victoria Reed's firm occupied 3 floors of a modernist building on Park Avenue, the financial heart of New York City. On Eleanor's first day as an intern, the receptionist, an elegant woman with platinum hair, looked her up and down with an expression that mixed curiosity and doubt. Eleanor didn't blame her. Her simple dress, bought at a clearance sale, and her worn shoes contrasted with the polished marble and contemporary artwork that decorated the space. "Victoria is waiting for you on the 15th floor, room 1502, the receptionist informed her, handing her a badge. "The elevator is over there to the right." Upon entering Victoria's office, Eleanor was greeted with a warm smile. "Welcome, Eleanor. I hope you're ready to work hard. I don't take it easy on anyone, much less someone with potential." The new internship paid 3 times more than the previous one, which allowed Eleanor to rent a small 2-bedroom apartment in the West Village. It wasn't a fancy place. The building, without an elevator, showed clear signs of wear, and the noise from the nearby highway invaded the windows during peak hours. But it was hers, the first home she could call her own since leaving Julian's house. The twins, now almost 3 years old, adapted quickly. Sister Agnes, who had become a kind of grandmother to the girls, helped decorate their room with donated furniture and colorful handmade curtains. It was also she who found a community daycare near the apartment, where the girls could stay during the day. "We're going to miss you at the Haven," the nun said on moving night. "But this is the right path. You built this, Eleanor, with your own effort." The following months were of intense learning. Victoria didn't exaggerate when she said Eleanor would work hard. Eleanor spent entire days analyzing cases, preparing reports, attending hearings. The exhaustion was constant, but there was a deep satisfaction in every small legal victory, in every client who left the firm with a little more hope than they had entered with. It was during this period that Eleanor worked on her first major case, a class action lawsuit representing 47 domestic workers who had been dismissed without labor rights by wealthy families in the Hamptons and Greenwich. "I want you to lead the preparation of this case," Victoria said, surprising her. "You understand these women better than any of us." Eleanor accepted the challenge. For weeks, she interviewed each of the women. She listened to their stories, documented abuse, unpaid overtime, harassment, humiliations. Each statement echoed fragments of her own experience, and although she never mentioned her past, she felt a visceral connection with those women. The case gained media visibility. The New York Times published an extensive report, and other media outlets followed suit. In one of the preliminary hearings, the courtroom was packed with journalists and law students. "Don't let the exposure affect you," Victoria advised. "Focus on what matters: justice for these women." The legal battle lasted almost a year. There were attempts at intimidation, insufficient settlement offers, procedural maneuvers to delay the trial. But Eleanor and Victoria's team persevered. And when the verdict finally came, favorable on all counts, the victory resonated far beyond that courtroom. "It's not just financial compensation," Eleanor explained to the clients, many of whom cried with emotion. "It's recognition. You are workers with dignity, with rights. No one can treat you as invisible." On the night of the celebration, after a dinner at the firm with the legal team and representatives of the domestic workers, Victoria called Eleanor into her office. "I have 2 gifts for you," she said, handing her an envelope. "First, this is for you and your daughters, a small portion of the case's fees, which you more than deserved." Eleanor opened the envelope, finding a check for an amount she had never imagined seeing in her name. "And the second gift," Victoria continued, handing her a folder, "is this. I just registered it. You will be the first lawyer to join me as a partner when you graduate in a few months. Reed and Vance Law. What do you think?" Eleanor couldn't hold back the tears. It wasn't just the check or the partnership offer. It was the recognition of her journey, her worth, her ability to rebuild her life after being discarded as something worthless. "I don't know what to say, Victoria." "Say yes, and then tell me that story you never shared, about a man who clearly underestimated who he was dealing with." That night, for the first time, Eleanor told everything to someone. About Julian, about how she met him, about the promises, the pregnancy, the expulsion. Victoria listened without interrupting, just nodding occasionally. "Do you know who Julian Thorne is?" Eleanor asked at the end. "Yes, the golden boy of the financial market, the one who's always in business magazines, about to marry Charlotte Davies' daughter." Victoria narrowed her eyes. "He doesn't know about the girls?" "No, and I prefer it to stay that way. I don't want anything from him." Victoria respected her decision, but that conversation planted a seed that would quietly grow over the next few years. After graduating with top honors and the Outstanding Student Award from the law school, Eleanor officially became a partner in the now renowned Reed and Vance firm. Her specialization in labor rights and social justice quickly transformed her into a reference in the legal field. The twins, now 6 years old, attended a good private school thanks to their mother's growing income. They were intelligent, curious girls, with Eleanor's same determined gaze, although their physical features, especially their clear blue eyes and blonde hair, were a constant reminder of who their father was. One Sunday morning, as they walked through Central Park, Emma, always the more direct of the two, asked the question Eleanor knew would one day come. "Mom, why don't we have a dad like other kids?" Eleanor sat down on a bench, calling the girls close to her. "You do have a dad, Emma. He just isn't present in our lives." "Doesn't he like us?" Lily asked, already teary-eyed. "That's not it, my love." Eleanor chose her words carefully. "He doesn't know about you. It was a choice I made a long time ago when you were still in my belly. Because what?" Emma insisted. Eleanor took a deep breath. How to explain the complexity of that story to 6-year-olds? "Sometimes adults make mistakes. Your dad made choices that hurt me a lot, and I decided that we needed to go our own way, just the three of us." "Is he a bad person?" Lily asked. "No, my love. He's a complicated person. Maybe one day, when you're older, you can meet him." "Yes, we want to." The girls seemed satisfied with the answer, at least temporarily, but Eleanor knew that conversation was just the beginning of a topic that would resurface many times. What she didn't imagine was that the reunion with Julian would come much sooner than she planned, and in circumstances that would change the course of all their lives. The envelope arrived on a Wednesday afternoon, delivered by a messenger at the firm. Eleanor immediately recognized the golden logo of the American Institute of Business Leadership, one of the country's most prestigious institutions, known for bringing together the crème de la crème of national business. "An invitation?" Victoria asked, who had just entered her office. Eleanor opened the envelope, pulling out a card printed on textured paper. "They're inviting me to be the keynote speaker at the Transformative Women event next week." She frowned. "It's strange. I've never been invited to anything corporate before." Victoria took the invitation, examining it carefully. "It's an important event. It'll be full of CEOs, investors, high-ranking people." She smiled. "I think we should celebrate. You're being recognized beyond legal circles." But Eleanor couldn't share her friend's enthusiasm. There was something about that invitation that unsettled her. "Can you check who the sponsors and organizers of this event are? I want to know exactly where I'm stepping." 2 days later, Victoria entered her office with a serious expression. "You were right to be suspicious," she said, handing her a folder. "Guess who the main sponsor of the event is? Thorne Investments. And what's more, on the same night as your panel, the Entrepreneur of the Year award will be presented. The favorite to receive it is Julian." Eleanor finished, feeling a chill run down her spine. "This can't be a coincidence. Do you think he found out about you? About the girls?" Eleanor shook her head. "I don't know. But one thing is for sure, it wasn't by chance that they invited me." During the following days, Eleanor debated internally. She could decline the invitation, avoid confrontation, keep her life and her daughter's lives protected from Julian's influence. But there was also another possibility: to use that platform to talk about issues that truly mattered. About justice, about the invisibility of vulnerable women, about the impunity of the powerful. One night, after putting the girls to bed, Eleanor called Father Michael, now almost 80 years old, but still as lucid and wise as the day she met him. "What does your heart tell you?" he asked, after hearing about her dilemma. "That I must go, not for revenge or confrontation, but because I earned the right to be there, because I have something valuable to say." "Then you already have your answer," the father replied, with the serenity of one who sees beyond immediate circumstances. "Just remember, he who seeks revenge ends up digging 2 graves, one for the enemy and one for himself." The next morning, Eleanor confirmed her attendance at the event. During the following week, she meticulously prepared her speech. She wouldn't mention Julian directly. She wouldn't expose her daughters. She wouldn't turn that moment into a spectacle of personal revelations. She would talk about what really mattered, the need for a fairer economic and legal system that didn't discard people like worthless objects. On the night of the event, the Grand Metropolitan Ballroom on Park Avenue glittered with lights and glamour. Limousines and luxury cars paraded at the entrance, dropping off CEOs, politicians, and celebrities. Eleanor arrived in a taxi, wearing an elegant navy blue suit, a gift from Victoria, who accompanied her for moral support. "Are you ready?" her friend and partner asked as they entered the shimmering lobby. "I am," Eleanor replied, surprised by her own calm. The event hall was imposing, with enormous crystal chandeliers and impeccably arranged tables. On the giant screens scattered throughout the room, the Thorne Investments logo alternated with images of the finalists for the night's main award. Julian's face appeared frequently, always with that controlled smile Eleanor knew so well. The same one he displayed at corporate dinners, the same one he maintained while whispering promises he never intended to keep. "Dr. Vance, what an honor to have you." A middle-aged man, introducing himself as the Institute's director, approached effusively. "Your talk is scheduled for 8:30 p.m., before the main award. You'll have about 30 minutes. Eleanor nodded, allowing herself to be guided to the table reserved for her near the stage. From where she was, she could see practically everyone present, including the table where Julian was sitting, next to an elegant woman she recognized as Olivia Davies, his fiancée, heiress of one of the country's largest industrial groups. He didn't notice her immediately. He was busy, laughing at something one of his table companions had said, exhibiting the same unwavering confidence as always. Physically, he had barely changed. Perhaps a few discreet lines around his eyes, a slightly different haircut. But he was the same man who had expelled her 8 years earlier. At precisely 8:30 p.m., the Master of Ceremonies took the stage. And now, we have the honor of welcoming our keynote speaker, Dr. Eleanor Vance, one of the brightest lawyers of the new generation. A specialist in labor rights and social causes, Dr. Vance became nationally known for her work in emblematic cases, such as the class action lawsuit of the Hamptons domestic workers and the defiance of textile industry workers in slavery-like conditions. Please welcome her with a warm round of applause. The room applauded politely. Eleanor stood up, walked to the stage with firm steps, and took her place at the microphone. It was at that moment that her eyes met Julian's. For an instant, he merely observed her with distant curiosity, like someone trying to place a vaguely familiar face. Then, recognition hit him like lightning. Eleanor saw the exact moment the color drained from his face, when his eyes widened with comprehension. He made a move to stand up, but his fiancée grabbed his arm, confused by his reaction. Eleanor began her talk with a clear and firm voice. "Good evening, everyone. It's an honor to be here, sharing some reflections on justice, work, and dignity in a country of such brutal contrasts as ours." For 30 minutes, she spoke eloquently on the topics she mastered, illustrating each point with real cases she had defended. She spoke about women who lost jobs when they became pregnant, about domestic workers treated as property, about the fragility of a system that protected the powerful and punished the vulnerable. At no point did she look directly at Julian, although she could feel his eyes fixed on her, as if trying to reconcile the confident woman on stage with the frightened young woman he had dismissed years ago. To conclude, Eleanor said, approaching the end of her speech, "I would like to share a personal reflection. 8 years ago, I was one of those invisible women. I worked as a domestic worker. I dreamed of a better future. I believed in the promises of a world that was not made for people like me. When I became pregnant, I was discarded like something worthless. I slept on park benches, went hungry, almost lost hope." The room was in absolute silence. Some of those present shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. Others looked down, avoiding confrontation with that raw reality. But I found help where I least expected it, in a haven, with sisters who welcomed me without judgment, with a priest who encouraged me to study, with professors who believed in my abilities, and mainly with my daughters, who are my strength every day. Eleanor paused. Then she continued, her voice softer, but no less powerful. My twins, Emma and Lily, are the best gift life gave me. They are proof that sometimes we need to lose everything to discover what we are truly capable of. At that moment, to everyone's surprise, including her own, the side doors of the hall opened. Sister Agnes entered, leading by the hand 2 8-year-old girls, identical, in simple blue dresses, and blonde hair tied in braids. The twins had insisted on attending their mother's talk, and the nun, after consulting Victoria, had decided to make a surprise. Everyone's eyes in the room turned to the newcomers, who walked shyly to sit next to Victoria. Julian, paralyzed, looked from the girls to Eleanor, the comprehension painfully visible on his face. He gestured to stand up again. "Thank you for your attention," Eleanor concluded, her voice slightly trembling from the surprise. "And may we build a fairer country, where no one needs to choose between dignity and survival." The audience erupted in applause. Many stood up, touched by the combination of professional competence and personal story. Eleanor went down from the stage and went directly to where her daughters were, hugging them tightly. "You were great, Mom," Emma exclaimed proudly. "Everyone was listening to you so intently," Lily commented, looking around, fascinated by the lights and the elegance of the setting. That's when Eleanor felt a presence behind her. She turned slowly, knowing exactly who she would find. Julian was standing a few steps away, paler than she had ever seen him. His eyes darted from Eleanor to the girls and back again, as if trying to absorb the reality unfolding before him. "Eleanor," he began, his voice hoarse. "I didn't know. I didn't imagine." "Who is he, Mom?" Emma asked, observing the stranger with curiosity. The entire hall seemed to have fallen silent, everyone attentive to the drama unfolding. In front of them, Olivia Davies had also approached, confused and alarmed by her fiancé's behavior. "Julian, what's going on? Do you know this woman?" Eleanor looked at Victoria, who nodded discreetly. Then she knelt down to be at her daughter's height. "Emma, Lily, this is Julian Thorne." She took a deep breath. "He is your dad." The girls looked at the tall, well-dressed man in front of them, immediately identifying the traits they shared. The same blue eyes, the same hair color, the shape of their noses. Olivia gasped, taking a step back. "What? Julian, what does this mean?" But Julian seemed not to hear her. He was absorbed in the 2 small versions of himself who faced him with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. "My daughters," he murmured. "You are my daughters." 3 days after the event, Eleanor was in her office reviewing documents for a new case when her secretary announced, "Dr. Vance, Mr. Julian Thorne is here. He says he needs to speak with you urgently." She wasn't surprised. She had been expecting this visit since the awards night, when she quickly left the hotel with the girls, avoiding the inevitable confrontation. "He can come in, Deborah." Julian looked different from the confident man she had seen at the event. There were deep, dark circles under his eyes, his impeccable suit contrasting with his dejected expression, as if he hadn't slept properly in days. "Thank you for seeing me," he said, remaining standing even after Eleanor gestured to the chair in front of her. "What can I do for you, Julian? I need to know about them, about my daughters." "Now they're your daughters?" The question came out more bitterly than she intended. "Eleanor, please." He finally sat down, leaning forward. "I know I have no right whatsoever. I know what I did is unforgivable, but I need to understand. Why did you never tell me? Why did you never ask for anything?" She watched him for a few moments, evaluating the sincerity in his eyes. "You accused me of lying about the pregnancy, remember? You said I was trying to pull a stunt. When a person shows who they really are, we should believe them." Julian looked down, visibly embarrassed. "I was an arrogant idiot. I had just taken over my father's company. I was scared of the responsibilities, of the expectations. I used you as an escape, and then I discarded you." He took a deep breath. "I'm not trying to justify myself. There is no justification. I just want you to understand that the man from 8 years ago isn't who I am today." "And who are you today, Julian? Olivia Davies' fiancé? The entrepreneur of the year? The philanthropist who appears on magazine covers? I don't even know who I am anymore." The answer came with surprising honesty. "Since I saw you on that stage, since I saw our daughters, I feel as if my whole life has been an elaborate farce." Eleanor crossed her arms, maintaining the emotional distance she had fought so hard to build. "What exactly do you want?" "To meet them, if you allow me, if they want to." He looked up. "I know I have no right to ask this. I know you raised them alone, that you built an admirable life from nothing, while I continued my privileged existence." Eleanor didn't respond immediately. For years, she had imagined this moment. Julian discovering about the daughters, begging for forgiveness, offering money to buy back lost time. But reality was more complex than her fantasies. "It's not just my decision," she finally said. "Emma and Lily are 8 years old. They are intelligent and sensitive. If they want to meet you, I won't stop them. But it will be on my terms, on their time." "It's more than I deserve," he replied, genuine relief in his voice. And Olivia, how did she react to all this? Julian's expression darkened. "The engagement is off. She couldn't deal with the fact that I was hiding something so serious." Eleanor nodded, showing no surprise or satisfaction. "I'm sorry for that." "Don't be," he shook his head. "It was more a marriage of convenience than love. Business alliances. You know how it works." A heavy silence settled between them. There was so much to be said, so many unanswered questions, so much unresolved pain. "I have a proposal," he finally said. "It's not money. I know you wouldn't accept. And frankly, it would be insulting to offer it. It's about something more significant." Eleanor raised her eyebrows, curious. "I'm revamping the human resources policy of all Thorne Group companies. I want to implement support programs for single mothers, extended paternity leave, on-site childcare, university scholarships for low-income employees." He paused before continuing. "I would like you to lead that project as an external consultant, without direct ties to me or the company. Your firm would receive a formal contract, market rates. You would be the most qualified person, both professionally and by personal experience." Eleanor didn't hide her surprise. "Why?" "Because it's the right thing to do, and because maybe, in some small way, it can be a way to start repairing the harm I caused. Not to you, I know that's impossible, but to other women in the same situation." And the proposal was unexpected, and Eleanor had to admit, it was smart. It wasn't a check to appease his conscience, but an opportunity to create significant structural changes. "I'll think about it," she replied, "and I'll talk to the girls about meeting you." When Julian left, Victoria immediately entered the office, barely containing her curiosity. "So, what did he want?" Eleanor told her about the conversation, about his request to meet the twins, about the professional proposal. "Are you going to accept?" Victoria asked. "Which part? Letting him meet the girls or working with him?" "Both." Eleanor looked out the window of her office, observing the gray New York skyline, the same city that had almost destroyed her and then welcomed her in her reconstruction. I think so. Not for him, but for Emma and Lily. They have the right to know their father, even if he doesn't deserve to know them. She paused. And as for the job, it could help many women who go through what I went through. It would be wrong to refuse it out of pride. That night, Eleanor sat with her daughters in the small living room of their apartment, now decorated with photos of them at different ages, framed diplomas, and small treasures that marked their journey. The girl's first drawing, her award for best student in law school, a stone from the Haven Garden. "Do you remember the man we met at the awards?" she asked, as the three shared a simple snack. The girls nodded attentively. "He would like to get to know you better, to spend some time with you. What do you think about that?" Emma, always the most direct, frowned. "Why? Why didn't he ever come before? Why does he only want to meet us now?" "Because he didn't know about you," Eleanor replied, staying true to her promise never to lie to her daughters. "It was a choice I made not to tell him. At the time, I thought it would be better that way. And now?" Lily, the more sensitive one, catching the emotional subtleties of the situation, asked, "Now I think you're old enough to decide if you want to meet him. But I want you to know, no matter what you choose, nothing changes between the three of us." The twins exchanged glances, having one of those silent conversations that only twin siblings can have. "Can we think about it for a bit?" Lily asked. "Of course, my loves. Take all the time you need." 2 weeks later, on a sunny Sunday, Eleanor took the girls to Central Park for the first meeting with Julian. They chose a public, neutral spot where the girls would feel safe and comfortable. He was already there when they arrived, sitting on a bench near the lake, without his usual suit, wearing jeans and a simple shirt. He seemed nervous, almost vulnerable. "Hello," Eleanor said, approaching with the twins. "Emma, Lily, you remember Mr. Thorne?" "You can call me Julian," he said, not knowing exactly how to behave. "I brought something for you." He extended 2 small packages wrapped in colorful paper. The girls looked at Eleanor, who nodded discreetly, allowing them to accept. Inside each box was a delicate silver necklace with a crescent moon charm. "They're pretty," Lily said, always polite. "I like mine," Emma admitted, more reluctant to show enthusiasm. "They were my grandmother's," he explained. "She used to say the moon is always there, even when we can't see it, just like the people we love." The first meeting was brief and awkward. Julian tried to ask questions about school, about what they liked to do, about their dreams. The answers were monosyllabic at first, but gradually the girls began to open up. Before saying goodbye, Emma, the most direct, asked, "Are you going to be our dad now? Like, for real?" Julian looked at Eleanor, unsure how to respond. "I would really like to be present in your lives, if you allow me," he finally said. "But I know that takes time. I understand if you need to go slowly." As the months passed, the meetings became more frequent. Julian met Father Michael and Sister Agnes, essential figures in the girls' lives. He spoke at length with Victoria, who was initially extremely protective of Eleanor and the twins. Gradually, he gained a place in his daughters' lives, not as a substitute for the incredible mother they had, but as a complementary presence. The project to restructure the Thorne Group's labor policies progressed under Eleanor's consultancy. She refused to participate in events or photos for publicity, insisting that the focus should be on the policies, not on her or her personal history with Julian. "I don't want this to become a redemption spectacle for your public image," she said firmly. "If we're going to do it, let's do it for the right reason." And Julian, to her surprise, agreed. They worked together professionally, maintaining the necessary distance, while simultaneously building a family arrangement that allowed the girls to have their father's presence without compromising the established dynamic with their mother. One autumn afternoon, Almost a year after the reunion at the event, Eleanor received an unexpected phone call. It was a proposal to lead the legal department of a large international human rights organization based in London. "It's the opportunity of a lifetime," Victoria said when Eleanor told her. "You have to accept." "And the girls? And the firm? And—" she hesitated. "And Julian?" "The girls are starting to build a relationship with him." Victoria looked at her seriously. "You've built your entire life thinking first of the girls and then of yourself. Maybe it's time to consider that what's best for them might also be what's best for you." That night, Eleanor talked to her daughters about the possibility of moving to London. To her surprise, they reacted with enthusiasm to the idea of a new adventure, although Lily expressed concern. "What about Dad? Are we going to leave him here alone?" The word "dad," which the girls had only recently begun to use, still sounded strange to Eleanor. "We can talk to him about it, see what he thinks." The next day, Eleanor called Julian, asking to meet him at the cafe near her office. When she told him about the proposal, she saw the same expression as 8 years ago when she announced her pregnancy. But this time, instead of rejection, there was understanding mixed with sadness. "That's an incredible opportunity," he said. "You deserve it. The girls deserve to see the world, to have every opportunity." "They're worried about you," Eleanor admitted, "about the idea of leaving you." Julian smiled, a genuine smile he rarely displayed in public. "That means a lot to me, more than I can express." He paused. "I can make frequent visits, and during school holidays, perhaps they can come spend time with me here." "You'd support our move?" "Eleanor, you've given me a gift I don't deserve, the chance to know our daughters. I won't be the one to stand in the way of your future." He hesitated, then added, "Besides, the Thorn Group's London office urgently needs a review of its labor policies. It would be a convenient coincidence to have our legal consultant nearby, wouldn't it?" Eleanor couldn't help but smile. It was so Julian to find a business solution to a personal matter. 3 months later, on a sunny spring morning, a taxi stopped in front of the small building in the West Village, where Eleanor and the girls had built their first true home. The suitcases were ready. The London apartment, already furnished, awaited them. To Eleanor's surprise, it wasn't just Victoria and the sisters who came to say goodbye. A small group formed on the sidewalk. Father Michael, now in a wheelchair, but with eyes as lively as ever, her colleagues from the firm, some neighbors who had become friends, and Julian, maintaining a respectful distance, letting the others have priority in their farewells. When it was finally his turn, he approached Eleanor as the girls settled into the taxi. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" "For not allowing me to be just the worst version of myself." He looked at the girls in the taxi, who waved animatedly. "You could have hated me forever. You would have had every right. But you chose a more difficult path." "It wasn't for you," Eleanor replied honestly. "It was for them. And for me. Carrying hate is too heavy a burden." Julian nodded, understanding. "You 3 taught me more about courage and dignity than I learned in my whole life in circles of power." Eleanor got into the taxi, exchanging one last look with the man who had once made her believe she was worthless, and who now watched her leave with genuine respect. As the vehicle pulled away, Emma, always observant, commented, "He seemed sad." "He'll be fine," Eleanor replied, hugging her daughters. "And so will we." The taxi turned the corner, leaving behind not only loved ones, but an entire past of pain, struggle, and finally, redemption. Ahead, the airport, a transatlantic flight, and the next page of a story that Eleanor Vance had decided to write by her own rules. A story where she was not a victim, nor an avenger, nor even a survivor. She was simply the protagonist of her career, her dignity, and above all, her unbreakable heart. A word about abusive relationships: understanding, action, and hope. Abusive individuals often act in a calculated manner to emotionally manipulate their partners, making them dependent and vulnerable. They begin by creating a false sense of security, promising eternal love, and appearing attentive at the beginning of the relationship. However, little by little, they start to erode the woman's self-esteem with subtle criticisms that become more frequent and cruel. These abusers use control as their main weapon. They control clothing, friendships, money, and even the woman's thoughts, making her believe that she is incapable of making decisions for herself. Often, they make comments like, "You're lucky to have me. No one else would love you like this." These words are a strategy to isolate her and break her confidence until she feels she has no other option but to stay in the relationship. Violence can be verbal, emotional, physical, or a combination of all, but it always follows the same pattern. The abuser blames the woman for problems, minimizes her pain, and makes her feel guilty for wanting something better for herself. This manipulation is so subtle that often victims take a long time to realize they are trapped in a cycle of abuse. But it is important to remember, it is not the victim's fault. No woman deserves to be disrespected, minimized, or mistreated. All women deserve love, respect, and happiness. If you are in such a situation, remember that it is possible to leave, that there are people and organizations ready to help you. You are stronger than you think, and you deserve a life full of peace and love. Leaving an abusive relationship is difficult, but it is the first step to regaining your freedom and rebuilding your self-esteem. You are not alone. Seek support, trust your strength, and remember that a better life awaits you. A life where you will be loved and valued for who you are. If this story touched your heart, we invite you to explore more content on our channel. We have many more exciting and thought-provoking stories that, like this one, seek to inspire you and show you that there is always hope. Click on the next video and join us in another narration that will surely captivate you from the very first moment. Don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for being part of this community. We'll see you in the next video.
The thundering of hooves against dirt was nearly drowned out by the roar of the crowd at the Kentucky Derby. But Olivia Parker was deaf to it all. Her focus was laser-sharp on the chestnut thoroughbred pulling ahead of the pack, the one no one had given a second glance. Except her. "Come on, underdog," she shouted, clutching her simple sundress at the waist, completely unaware that she had risen to her tiptoes in excitement. Olivia shouldn't have been there at all. As a small-town librarian from Millfield with a modest salary, the exclusive Churchill Downs venue was far beyond her usual orbit. But her best friend Zoe had won 2 tickets in a radio contest and dragged her along, insisting it would expand her horizons beyond dusty bookshelves. 3 boxes down, Maxwell Sterling III watched the same race with practiced nonchalance. The 35-year-old tech billionaire adjusted his custom Tom Ford suit and sipped his bourbon, barely registering the frenzied atmosphere around him. Horse racing was merely another social obligation, another place to be seen and to close deals. Sterling Industries stock jumped 5 points this morning, his assistant Reed informed him, eyes glued to a tablet. And Mr. Yamamoto is waiting for your call about the Tokyo merger. Maxwell replied, his attention momentarily caught by a flash of genuine joy. Olivia's unbridled excitement as she cheered. Something about her authenticity cut through his carefully constructed world of performative wealth. He found himself staring, an unfamiliar feeling stirring in his chest. "Who's that?" he asked, nodding in Olivia's direction. Reed followed his gaze. "Nobody important, sir. Probably won the ticket in some contest." Maxwell's lips curled into the smirk that had graced countless business magazines. 20,000 says her horse doesn't place. "Sir?" Reed looked confused. "The woman in the yellow sundress. She's cheering for underdog." Maxwell scoffed at the name. "I'll bet 20,000 her horse doesn't even place in the top 3. As if she'd heard him, Olivia turned. Their eyes met across the short distance, her warm brown gaze clashing with his cool blue stare. Something electric passed between them. Challenge, curiosity, and inexplicable recognition. The race announcer's voice crescendoed. And coming up, from behind its underdog making an unbelievable push. Maxwell's attention snapped back to the track just in time to see the chestnut horse, the 80-1 long shot, surge past the favorite and thunder across the finish line. First place. Olivia erupted into joyous laughter, jumping up and down while hugging Zoe. When she turned back toward Maxwell, her smile was radiant, but tinged with something mischievous. She'd noticed him watching, noticed his dismissal, and somehow, impossibly, she knew about his bet. With a boldness that surprised even herself, Olivia raised an imaginary glass in his direction, a toast from the victorious underdog to the man who'd bet against her. Maxwell's jaw tightened. Nobody challenged him, nobody bested him, and certainly not a nobody in a sundress from the general admission section. "Find out who she is," he told Reed, his competitive nature fully awakened. "And have my car ready. I believe I have a debt to settle." As the crowds began to disperse, neither Maxwell nor Olivia realized that their chance encounter had just set in motion a collision course between 2 utterly different worlds, one built on authentic passions and simple pleasures, the other constructed of power, prestige, and control. The race was over, but the real contest was just beginning. "Liv, don't look now, but there's a man in a suit worth more than my car heading straight for us," Zoe whispered, nudging Olivia as they navigated through the post-race crowd. Olivia glanced over her shoulder, her eyes widening as she recognized the approaching figure. Maxwell Sterling moved through the throng with effortless authority, people instinctively stepping aside as if his wealth created its own gravitational field. "Maybe he's just heading to the VIP exit," Olivia suggested, but her racing heart betrayed her certainty that he was coming for her. "Miss." His voice cut through the ambient noise like a perfectly tuned instrument. Olivia paused, took a deep breath and turned with practiced poise that belied her inner turmoil. "Yes?" Maxwell stopped before her, his imposing 6'2" frame towering over her 5'5" stature. Up close she could see the flecks of gray in his otherwise ice-blue eyes, the imperceptible scar above his right eyebrow, and the way his custom suit fit him like architectural precision. "You seem to have gotten lucky today," he said, his voice carrying that particular cadence of the extraordinarily wealthy, confident that every word deserved attention. Olivia tilted her head. "Luck had nothing to do with it, Mr. Sterling. Maxwell Sterling." He waited for the flicker of recognition, the shift in demeanor his name usually evoked. "Well, Mr. Sterling, underdog won because he has heart. Something the statistics and odds makers can't quantify." She smiled sweetly. "But I'm guessing you don't put much stock in heart." Zoe coughed to cover a laugh, while Reed, hovering behind Maxwell, looked mortified. Maxwell's expression remained unreadable, but something sparked in his eyes. Annoyance, amusement, or perhaps both. $20,000 says you can't repeat that success, he challenged, reaching into his jacket and producing a checkbook. "Pick the winner of next weekend's Preakness Stakes." Olivia's eyes widened. $20,000 was nearly her annual salary. "I don't gamble, Mr. Sterling," she replied, then added with unmistakable emphasis, "Not with money, anyway." Maxwell's pen paused mid-air. "What do you gamble with, then?" "Time, truth, the occasional scoop of triple chocolate ice cream when I'm supposed to be on a diet." Her eyes sparkled with mischief. Things of actual value. For perhaps the first time in a decade, Maxwell found himself momentarily speechless. This woman was unexpected. "Then how about this?" he finally said, slipping the checkbook away. "If your pick wins the Preakness, I'll donate $20,000 to any charity of your choice." "And if my pick loses?" Olivia asked, suddenly, wary. "Then you'll join me for dinner." Zoe let out an audible gasp. Reed's eyes bulged. Olivia crossed her arms. "Let me get this straight. If I win, charity gets money. If I lose, you get my company?" "Precisely." Maxwell's smile was confident, practiced. "Though I'd frame it as, either way, someone deserving gets something valuable." "That's quite the ego, Mr. Sterling," Olivia retorted, but her lips quirked upward despite herself. "Library restoration project," she suddenly declared. "Excuse me?" "The Millfield Library Restoration Project. That's my charity." Olivia extended her hand. "And Night Whisper will win the Preakness." Maxwell took her hand, noting how small yet firm it felt in his grasp. "I look forward to our dinner, Miss Parker, Olivia Parker," she supplied, withdrawing her hand from his lingering hold. "Though I wouldn't make reservations just yet." As Maxwell walked away, Reed frantically tapped on his tablet. "Sir, there's no horse named Night Whisper running in the Preakness." "Find out everything about Olivia Parker from Millfield," Maxwell replied, his eyes still on Olivia's retreating figure. "And get me information on the Millfield Library." Back in their budget hotel room, Zoe fell backward onto the bed. "Did you just make a bet with Maxwell Sterling? The Maxwell Sterling of Sterling Tech? The guy worth like $50 billion? Olivia kicked off her shoes, her bravado finally giving way to shock. "I think I did, and I completely made up a horse name." Zoe started laughing hysterically. "Oh God, you're going to end up having dinner with him." "Maybe not," Olivia said, pulling out her phone. "I'm going to research every horse in that race until I find one with heart." She paused, then looked up with a mix of terror and exhilaration. "Zoe, what have I done?" "You've just entered the plot of a romantic comedy, my friend," Zoe replied, wiping tears of laughter from her eyes. "And I cannot wait to see how it ends." Maxwell's private jet cut through clouds at 40,000 feet as he reviewed the dossier Reed had compiled on Olivia Parker. 32 years old, master's in library science from Vanderbilt, employed as head librarian at Millfield Public Library for 6 years, previously worked at Nashville Central, volunteers teaching adult literacy classes, no criminal record, credit score respectable but not remarkable, no significant debt beyond student loans, lives in a one-bedroom apartment above Rosie's Cafe on Elm Street, parents both retired teachers, one older sister, married with 2 children in Cincinnati. Maxwell frowned. "That's it?" Reed looked confused. Sir, I can dig deeper, but no, I mean, there's nothing surprising here. No scandals, no hidden millions, no secret identity. Maxwell tapped the file with evident frustration. She's exactly who she appears to be. Is that disappointing? Reed ventured cautiously. Maxwell didn't answer, instead staring out the window at the patchwork landscape below. He was unaccustomed to people who lived transparent lives. In his world, everyone had angles, hidden agendas, secrets leveraged for advantage. And what about this Millfield library? He asked finally. Reed swiped to a new screen. Small town library built 1932. Significant structural issues. The restoration project has been fundraising for 3 years but only collected about 40,000 of the 300,000 needed. Show me. Reed handed over his tablet displaying photos of a charming brick building with obvious signs of disrepair, water damage on the ceiling, outdated, electrical systems, ancient plumbing. What caught Maxwell's eye, however, was a photograph of Olivia surrounded by children, reading animatedly from a book, her expression so alive it seemed to leap from the screen. And the Preakness? Maxwell asked, his voice deliberately casual as he handed back the tablet. No horse named Night Whisper is registered, sir. She made it up. Maxwell laughed, a genuine sound so rare that Reed looked up in surprise. Of course she did, Maxwell said, still smiling. She's bluffing. Should I cancel the bet, sir? Maxwell's smile turned predatory. Absolutely not. I believe Miss Parker has just guaranteed me the pleasure of her company for dinner. Meanwhile in Millfield, Olivia sat cross-legged on her apartment floor surrounded by printouts of thoroughbred statistics, racing forms, and jockey profiles. This is insane, she muttered, pushing a strand of hair behind her ear. I know nothing about horse racing. Yet you correctly picked an 80-to-1 long shot, Zoe reminded her, bringing over 2 mugs of tea. Maybe you're a horse whisperer who doesn't know it yet. That was different, Olivia protested. I saw Underdog before the race. Something about his eyes. She shook her head. I can't explain it, but I knew he wouldn't give up. Zoe plopped down beside her. So we need to go see the horses before the Preakness. We can't afford to go to Baltimore. No, Zoe agreed, but we can watch the pre-race coverage. They always show the horses. Olivia's phone chimed with a notification. Oh my God, she whispered, staring at the screen. What? Zoe leaned over. It's an email from Sterling Industries. They've donated $10,000 to the Library Restoration Fund as a gesture of goodwill before our wager is settled. Olivia looked up, bewildered. Why would he do that? Maybe he's not completely terrible, Zoe suggested, then quickly added. Or maybe he's trying to throw you off your game. Psychological warfare. Olivia bit her lip. I should thank him, right? Absolutely not, Zoe declared. That's exactly what he wants. Make him wait. Across town at the Millfield Library, the elderly head of the Restoration Committee, Mrs. Abernathy, was having a very different reaction to Sterling Industries' donation. Miss Parker? She exclaimed, waving Olivia down the moment she arrived for work the next morning. The most extraordinary thing has happened. We've received a donation from Sterling Industries, and Mr. Sterling himself has requested a tour of our facilities next week. Olivia nearly dropped her coffee. He what? He's coming here to Millfield. Mrs. Abernathy clutched Olivia's arm. This could be exactly what we needed. A wealthy benefactor. You must give him the tour, dear. Show him every crack and leak. I really don't think, Olivia stammered. I insist. Tuesday at 2 p.m. Don't be late. Mrs. Abernathy hurried away, already making notes about areas that needed particular attention. Olivia stood frozen, her mind racing. Maxwell Sterling was coming to her turf. This wasn't part of their arrangement. What game was he playing? Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Looking forward to seeing your professional habitat, Miss Parker. Perhaps you'll show me why this particular library deserves my philanthropy. MS Olivia stared at her phone, torn between irritation and something dangerously close to anticipation. She began typing, deleted it, then tried again. Libraries don't have to justify their worth, Mr. Sterling. They're one of the few places left where value isn't measured in dollars. But I'll pencil you in. Dress casually. Our budget doesn't extend to removing ink stains from bespoke suits. OP. As she hit send, Olivia couldn't help but smile. Whatever game they were playing, she refused to be a passive participant. In his Manhattan penthouse, Maxwell read her response and laughed out loud, startling his housekeeper. The Preakness was still 10 days away, but suddenly, Tuesday couldn't come fast enough. Tuesday arrived with unseasonable rain that turned Millfield's Main Street into a glistening reflection of its storefronts. Olivia watched through the library's arched windows as a sleek black Bentley pulled to the curb, looking as out of place as a thoroughbred in a petting zoo. "He's here," whispered Mrs. Abernathy, frantically adjusting the fresh flowers she'd placed at the circulation desk that morning. Olivia smoothed her simple navy dress and took a steadying breath. "Remember, we're not desperate. We're showcasing a community treasure that happens to need some support." "Dear, we are absolutely desperate," Mrs. Abernathy corrected her cheerfully. "But I take your point." The library's ancient door creaked open, and Maxwell Sterling stepped inside. Without an umbrella, Olivia noted with satisfaction. His perfectly tailored casual attire, which undoubtedly cost more than her monthly rent, was speckled with raindrops, and his usually immaculate hair was slightly disheveled. He looked, Olivia thought traitorously, even more handsome this way. "Mr. Sterling," she greeted him, extending her hand. "Welcome to Millfield Public Library, where we value knowledge over net worth." Maxwell's eyes crinkled as he shook her hand. "Miss Parker, I see your facility matches your personality. Charming, slightly provocative, and in need of significant structural reinforcement." Mrs. Abernathy gasped, but Olivia laughed despite herself. "Since you've already made your assessment, perhaps you'd like to leave your check and be on your way?" she suggested sweetly. "And miss the personalized tour you've undoubtedly prepared? I wouldn't dream of it." Maxwell gestured for her to lead on. "Show me why this place matters." Something in his tone, an unexpected sincerity beneath the practiced charm, caught Olivia off guard. She nodded and began walking through the main reading room. "This library was built during the Great Depression," she explained as they walked, "using local limestone and labor from the WPA. Those aren't just bookshelves, they're hand-carved by craftsmen who would otherwise have been unemployed." Maxwell ran his fingers along the worn wood, noting the intricate details that mass production could never replicate. As they continued through the building, Olivia pointed out not just the physical problems, the leaking roof, the outdated wiring, the inadequate heating system, but also the lives interwoven with the space. The children's corner where 3 generations of Millfield residents had discovered reading. The study carrels where local students without home internet access completed their homework. The community room where everything from ESL classes to knitting circles gathered. "And this," she said, leading him into a small room lined with glass. "Cases is my favorite part." Inside the cases were artifacts of local history, faded photographs, handwritten letters, farming implements, and medical tools from the town's founding. "Millfield's collective memory," Maxwell observed, studying a sepia-toned wedding photograph. "Exactly," Olivia replied, surprised by his intuitive understanding. "Libraries aren't just book warehouses, Mr. Sterling. They're the living archives of their communities." Their eyes met, and for a brief moment the sparring stopped. Something unguarded passed between them, a shared appreciation for preservation, for things that held value beyond their monetary worth. The spell broke when Maxwell's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned, and silenced it. "Trouble in the kingdom?" Olivia asked. "Nothing that won't wait." He gestured to a water stain on the ceiling. "That, however, won't. Your restoration committee has seriously underestimated the cost, Miss Parker. You need closer to 500,000, not 3. Olivia's heart sank. "That's not possible for us to raise." "Perhaps not through bake sales and charity auctions," Maxwell agreed. "But there are other options." "Such as?" "Historical preservation grants. matched funding, initiatives, corporate sponsorships. He walked around the perimeter of the room, assessing. Sterling Industries has a foundation that specializes in community revitalization projects. Olivia narrowed her eyes. Is this your way of trying to win our bet? Dangling funding to distract me? Maxwell looked genuinely offended. Contrary to what you might believe, Miss Parker, I don't need to resort to bribery to win a simple wager. Nothing about you seems simple, Mr. Sterling. Rain drummed steadily on the roof, punctuated by the distinct plink of water dripping into a strategically placed bucket. Maxwell's expression softened unexpectedly. When I was 10, he said quietly, my grandfather would take me to the public library every Saturday. My father disapproved, thought it was beneath our station. But those afternoons exploring worlds between pages, they mattered. Olivia stared at him, caught off guard by this glimpse beneath his polished surface. What happened? She asked. Grandfather died. Father sent me to boarding school. Life moved on. Maxwell shrugged as if discarding the memory. The point is, I understand the value of places like this. Before Olivia could respond, the library door burst open and a drenched Zoe rushed in, brandishing her phone. Liv, I've been trying to call you. The pre-race profiles are up and… She stopped abruptly, registering Maxwell's presence. Oh, hello? Ms. Zoe Chen, I presume, Maxwell said smoothly. Miss Parker's accomplice from the Derby. Mr. Sterling, Zoe acknowledged with a nod that was half bow, clearly flustered. I didn't realize you were here, in our library, in Millfield. She shot Olivia a wide-eyed, what is happening look. I was just leaving, Maxwell announced. He turned to Olivia. Thank you for the tour, Miss Parker. It was enlightening. And your verdict? Olivia asked, suddenly anxious about his assessment. Maxwell studied her for a moment, taking in her genuine concern. I think there's more worth preserving here than meets the eye. He nodded politely to Mrs. Abernathy, who had been hovering nearby throughout the tour, and started toward the door. Pausing at the threshold, he turned back. Oh, and Miss Parker, I've taken the liberty of registering a horse named Night Whisper for the Preakness. Consider it my contribution to making our wager official. With that bombshell, he disappeared into the rain, leaving Olivia speechless. Did he just… Zoe began. Yes, Olivia whispered, equal parts outraged and impressed. He bought and named a horse just to avoid admitting I bluffed. That's either the most arrogant or the most romantic thing I've ever heard, Zoe declared. Olivia watched the Bentley pull away, her mind reeling. The terrifying part is, I'm no longer sure which. Pimlico Racecourse buzzed with the electric atmosphere that only Triple Crown races can generate. Olivia, wearing a borrowed emerald green dress and a small matching fascinator that Zoe had insisted was absolutely necessary race etiquette, felt like an imposter among the racing elite. Stop fidgeting, Zoe whispered as they navigated through the crowd. You look amazing. I feel ridiculous, Olivia hissed back. And I still can't believe he actually bought and named a horse to avoid admitting I made up a name. The man is worth $50 billion, Zoe reminded her. Buying a racehorse for him is like us splurging on guacamole at Chipotle. Maxwell had arranged VIP passes for them, much to Olivia's conflicted gratitude. Part of her wanted to decline, on principle, but her pragmatic side couldn't pass up the opportunity to witness the race from the best vantage point. As they entered the exclusive owner's area, Olivia immediately spotted Maxwell in conversation with several distinguished-looking men. He wore a light gray suit that somehow looked both perfectly appropriate for the venue and distinctly more refined than those around him. He glanced up, catching her eye, and excused himself mid-conversation. Miss Parker, he greeted her, with a small smile that seemed more genuine than his usual practiced charm. I was beginning to worry you'd forfeited our wager. And miss seeing this famous Night Whisper in person? Not a chance, Mr. Sterling. Olivia matched his tone, determined to maintain her composure despite the butterflies that had inexplicably taken flight in her stomach. Speaking of which, Zoe interjected, where is this miracle horse? The one that materialized from Olivia's imagination? Maxwell gestured toward the paddock area. Being saddled as we speak. Would you like to meet him? Minutes later, they stood at the edge of the paddock, where grooms prepared the thoroughbreds for the race. Maxwell led them to a magnificent gray colt with a dark mane that rippled like silk in the afternoon light. Night Whisper, Maxwell introduced with unmistakable pride. Formerly known as Silent Thunder before I acquired him last week. Not a favorite, but his bloodlines are impeccable. Olivia stepped closer to the railing, mesmerized by the animal's quiet intensity. Night Whisper turned his head toward her, intelligent eyes assessing her with uncanny focus. He's beautiful, she breathed, forgetting momentarily about their wager, about Maxwell's billions, about everything except the connection she felt with this magnificent creature. He reminds me of you, Maxwell said quietly. Olivia turned, startled. Excuse me? Underestimated, overlooked by the experts, but with something in the eyes that suggests hidden depths. Maxwell's expression was unreadable, but his voice carried an undercurrent of sincerity that caught her off guard. Before she could formulate a response, the announcement came for owners to clear the paddock area. That's my cue, Maxwell said. Your seats are in my box. I'll join you shortly. As he walked away, Zoe grabbed Olivia's arm. Did Maxwell Sterling just compare you to his racehorse and somehow make it the most romantic thing I've ever heard? It wasn't romantic, Olivia protested, ignoring the warmth spreading across her cheeks. It was, observant. Zoe rolled her eyes. Keep telling yourself that. In Maxwell's private box, Olivia found herself simultaneously impressed and uncomfortable with the lavish spread of champagne and gourmet hors d'oeuvres. Reed, Maxwell's ever-present assistant, hovered nearby, occasionally glancing their way, with thinly veiled curiosity. So, Olivia finally said, approaching him while Zoe enthusiastically sampled the canapes, how long have you worked for Mr. Sterling? 8 years, 4 months, and 12 days, Reed answered promptly. That's precise. Mr. Sterling values precision. Reed hesitated, then added, He's different, you know, since meeting you. Olivia nearly choked on her champagne. Different? How? He scheduled a meeting with our foundation director about library initiatives. He visited a stable for the first time in 15 years. He laughed. Reed leaned closer, lowering his voice. Mr. Sterling doesn't laugh. Not genuinely. Before Olivia could process this information, Maxwell returned, bringing with him the crackling energy that seemed to follow him everywhere. They're at the starting gates, he announced, motioning toward their seats at the front of the box. As they settled in to watch, Maxwell casually asked, Have you given any thought to which charity will receive the $20,000 when Night Whisper wins? Don't you mean if? Olivia countered, raising an eyebrow. I never bet against my own investments, Miss Parker. His smile was confident but lacked its usual edge of arrogance. The Millfield Library Restoration Fund, she answered. Though after your visit, I suspect you already knew that. And have you thought about where we'll have dinner when Night Whisper doesn't win? Maxwell asked, his eyes fixed on the track, where the horses were being loaded into the starting gates. I haven't, Olivia admitted, because I won't lose. The starting bell rang, the gates flew open, and 14 thoroughbreds exploded onto the track in a thunder of hooves. Olivia found herself on her feet without realizing she had stood, her eyes locked on the gray colt that had begun the race in the middle of the pack. Night Whisper moved with fluid grace, his powerful stride eating up ground as they rounded the first turn. Come on, she whispered, surprising herself with how desperately she wanted this horse, this impossible manifestation of her offhand bluff, to succeed. Maxwell stood beside her, his usual composure slipping as he urged the horse forward. Their shoulders touched, neither pulling away from the contact. As the horses thundered down the backstretch, Night Whisper began making his move, sliding past competitors with each powerful stride. By the final turn, he had moved into third position. He's doing it, Zoe gasped. He's actually doing it. The front runners entered the final stretch, The favorite, Golden Empire, still leading by 2 lengths, with Night Whisper gaining ground with every stride. The crowd's roar became deafening as Night Whisper pulled even with the second-place horse, then surged past, setting his sights on Golden Empire. "Go!" Olivia and Maxwell shouted in unison. The barrier between billionaire and librarian momentarily dissolved by their shared investment in this magnificent animal's performance. 20 yards from the finish line, Night Whisper drew alongside Golden Empire. The 2 horses battled stride for stride, neither yielding an inch. The finish line flashed beneath them, so close that even the spectators couldn't immediately tell who had won. Silence fell over their box as everyone stared at the giant screen, waiting for the official results. Olivia realized she was clutching Maxwell's arm, her fingers digging into the expensive fabric of his suit. She moved to pull away, but his hand covered hers, keeping it in place. The results flashed on the screen. Golden Empire Night Whisper. Royal triumph. Second, Maxwell breathed, a complex mix of emotions playing across his features. By a nose. Olivia felt a conflicting surge of disappointment and exhilaration. Night Whisper, her imaginary horse made real, had nearly won one of the most prestigious races in the world. "I guess this means I owe you dinner," she said quietly. Maxwell turned to her, his expression softer than she'd ever seen it. "No, Miss Parker, this means I get the privilege of having dinner with you." In that moment, with the roar of the crowd still echoing around them, and the afternoon sun catching the flecks of gold in Maxwell's eyes, Olivia realized with crystal clarity that she was in serious danger of falling for Maxwell Sterling. And, judging by the way he was looking at her, like she was the real prize of the day. The feeling might just be mutual. "I can't believe I'm saying this," Zoe announced, breaking the moment as she raised her champagne glass. "But here's to losing. Bets and unexpected outcomes." Olivia and Maxwell clinked their glasses to hers, their eyes never leaving each other. "To unexpected outcomes," Maxwell echoed, a new warmth in his voice that made Olivia's heart race faster than any thoroughbred. Olivia stood before her modest closet, facing what felt like an impossible dilemma. "I have nothing to wear to dinner with a billionaire," she groaned as Zoe perched on her bed, scrolling through her phone. "What about that black dress you wore to the librarians' conference last year? Too professional. The floral sundress? Too casual. The blue cocktail dress from your cousin's wedding?" Olivia paused, considering. "Maybe. But I'd need different shoes." Her phone chimed with a text. "Maxwell. Dress comfortably. No need for formal. Attire. Car will pick you up at 7. MS. Olivia showed the message to Zoe, who immediately looked suspicious. What does comfortable mean to a man who wears custom Tom Ford to a horse race? She wondered aloud. Is this a trap? Or maybe, Olivia ventured, he's actually trying to make me feel at ease? Zoe's expression softened. You really like him, don't you? Olivia sat heavily on the bed. I think I do. And it makes absolutely no sense. We're from different worlds. He's arrogant, entitled, and probably used to dating supermodels. He's also intelligent, surprisingly thoughtful, and named a racehorse after your bluff, Zoe pointed out. Not to mention, he looks at you like you're the most fascinating creature he's ever encountered. That's just because I don't worship his wealth, Olivia reasoned. Or maybe, Zoe suggested gently, it's because you see past it. At exactly 7 p.m., a car arrived. Not the ostentatious Bentley Olivia had expected, but a classic Aston Martin DB5 in silver. Maxwell emerged from the driver's seat, wearing dark jeans and a simple cashmere sweater that probably cost more than her monthly rent, but looked effortlessly understated. Olivia had chosen the blue cocktail dress with a light cardigan, striking a balance between elegant and relaxed. You look beautiful, Maxwell said as she approached, his customary confidence tinged with something that, remarkably, resembled nervousness. You drove yourself, Olivia observed, genuinely surprised. No driver? No read? I thought you might appreciate a break from the billionaire circus. Maxwell replied with a self-deprecating smile that transformed his features into something boyishly charming. Just two people having dinner. Is that even possible? She asked, allowing him to open the passenger door. Let's find out. As they drove through the countryside, Olivia expected they were heading to some exclusive restaurant in the nearest city. Instead, Maxwell turned onto an unmarked gravel road that wound through a wooded area before opening onto a clearing, with a stunning view of the valley below. A small, elegant table for two had been set up near the edge, complete with candles and a portable heater to ward off the evening chill. "What is this?" Olivia asked, enchanted despite herself. "Technically, it's private property," Maxwell admitted, as he parked. "But before you accuse me of showing off my real estate portfolio, I should clarify. This land belongs to the Millfield Historical Society. I made a donation for permission to use it tonight." "So you're saying you didn't buy an entire hillside just for our dinner?" Olivia teased. "I'm almost disappointed. Sorry to subvert expectations." As they settled at the table, a chef and server emerged from a discreet catering tent to present the first course, a simple but exquisitely prepared soup, featuring local spring vegetables. "This is..." Olivia struggled to find words that wouldn't sound trite. "Too much?" Maxwell asked, watching her reaction carefully. "Surprisingly perfect," she decided. As they progressed through dinner, Olivia found herself relaxing into conversation that flowed more naturally than she'd anticipated. Maxwell shared stories from his early days building Sterling Technologies, sleeping on office floors, surviving on ramen noodles, that contradicted her image of him as someone born into effortless privilege. "Wait," she interrupted when he mentioned dropping out of college. "Your file said you have degrees from Harvard and Stanford." Maxwell raised an eyebrow. "My file?" Olivia blushed. "Zoe may have conducted some online research." "Ah, well, I completed those degrees later, after the company was successful." He twirled his wine glass thoughtfully. "My father insisted, said no one would take me seriously without the proper credentials." "Your father sounds difficult," Maxwell supplied. "He was a self-made man who never quite believed he belonged among the elite. He was determined I wouldn't face the same insecurities." "So he raised you to believe you were better than everyone else?" Maxwell considered this. "He raised me to never show weakness. There's a difference." Olivia leaned forward. "And how's that working out for you, Mr. Sterling?" "Until recently, quite effectively." His eyes held hers. "And then a librarian in a yellow sundress called my bluff at a horse race. The dessert course arrived, a delicate souffle that the chef presented with a flourish." "You know," Olivia said, after savoring her first bite, "I've been wondering something all evening." "Just one thing?" "I'm disappointed." She ignored his teasing. "Why did you approach me that day at the Derby? You could have just written off the 20,000. It couldn't have meant anything to you." Maxwell set down his spoon, his expression turning serious. "Do you want the charitable answer, or the honest one?" "Honest, please, always." "I was bored," he admitted, "not just with the race, but with everything. Business challenges that once excited me had become routine. People who always agreed with me, always wanted something from me." He looked up at the stars emerging above them. "And then there you some were genuinely excited about a long-shot horse, completely indifferent to my status, looking at me like I was just another arrogant rich guy in a suit." "You were just another arrogant rich guy in a suit," Olivia pointed out with a smile. "Exactly. And it was..." He searched for the right word. "Refreshing." "So I was a novelty," Olivia concluded, feeling a twinge of disappointment. "At first," Maxwell acknowledged. "But then you became much more interesting than that. You challenged me. You made me laugh. You made me think." He paused. "Do you know how rare that is in my world?" The candlelight flickered across his features, softening the sharp edges that success and privilege had carved there. "I still don't understand why you went to so much trouble," Olivia pressed. "Buying a horse, naming it Night Whisper, Maxwell laughed softly. Because you bluffed. Brilliantly. And instead of calling you on it, I wanted to make your bluff real. He reached across the table, his fingers lightly brushing hers. Maybe I wanted to see what else about you I could make real. The air between them hummed with possibility. There's something else you should know, Maxwell said, his tone shifting. I've transferred $500,000 to the Millfield Library Restoration Fund. Olivia's eyes widened. Maxwell, you can't. I can, he interrupted gently. And before you accuse me of trying to impress you with my money, it's being done through proper channels. The Sterling Foundation has approved the grant as part of our literacy initiative. All the paperwork is legitimate. But why? Because I visited a library that matters to its community. Because preserving history and knowledge is objectively worthwhile. He hesitated. And yes, because it matters to you. Olivia was speechless, torn between gratitude for what this meant for her beloved library and wariness about his motives. This isn't because of our dinner, Maxwell clarified, reading her expression. The grant was approved before the Preakness. Whether Night Whisper had won or lost, whether you'd agreed to dinner or not, the library would have received the funding. Thank you, she said finally, meaning it deeply. But it doesn't change anything between us. I wouldn't expect it to. Maxwell's smile held no trace of his former arrogance. That's entirely up to you. After dessert, they walked to the edge of the clearing, looking out over the twinkling lights of Millfield below. The night air carried the scent of wildflowers and possibility. Night Whisper is retiring from racing, Maxwell announced unexpectedly. After one race? Olivia was surprised. But he nearly won. Exactly. He'll retire undefeated in our eyes with a legendary what could have been story. Maxwell turned to face her. I'm donating him to an equine therapy program for children with disabilities. They need gentle souls with heart. Something inside Olivia melted at this gesture, so thoughtful and unexpected. You're not who I thought you were, Maxwell Sterling, she said softly. Neither are you, Olivia Parker. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. You're far more dangerous. Dangerous? She echoed, acutely aware of the diminishing space between them. You make me want things I'd forgotten existed. Such as authenticity, passion for something beyond success, connection with someone who sees me, not my bank account. His hand gently brushed a strand of hair from her face. The terrifying possibility that I might actually need someone. Olivia's heart hammered against her ribs. That does sound dangerous. Especially for a man who's never needed anyone. Maxwell agreed, his face now inches from hers. And yet, here you are, she whispered. Here I am, he confirmed, and finally closed the distance between them. Their kiss began tentatively, a question being asked and answered before deepening into something that felt remarkably like coming home. When they finally parted, Olivia kept her eyes closed for a moment, memorizing the feeling. What happens now? She asked quietly. Traditionally, this is where I'd make some grand gesture. Fly you to Paris for breakfast perhaps, or buy you a publishing house so you could have all the books you want. Maxwell's thumb traced the curve of her cheek, but I suspect you'd find that more off-putting than impressive. You suspect correctly, Olivia confirmed with a laugh. Then how about this? I'd like to take you to dinner again and again after that. I'd like to learn what makes Olivia Parker tick, beyond her passionate defense of public libraries and her uncanny ability to pick long-shot horses. Olivia pretended to consider. That depends. Will this dinner involve helicopters or privately owned islands? Would you prefer a picnic in the park? Or I could cook for you, though I should warn you, my culinary skills are limited to exactly 3 dishes. A billionaire who can cook? Now that I have to see. As they walked, back to the car hand in hand, Olivia reflected on the improbable journey from that chance encounter at Churchill Downs to this moment, from antagonists to whatever they were becoming. For what it's worth, Maxwell said as he opened her car. I'm glad Night Whisper came in second. Because you won our bet? Because losing would have been too easy for you. His eyes danced with mischief. This way you had to have dinner with me and discover that I might actually be worth your time. Olivia laughed. Your ego remains intact, I see. Some things never change entirely, he acknowledged with a grin. But some things do. I've never thanked anyone for calling my bluff before. As they drove back toward town, the stars brilliant above them and the future unfolding before them like an unwritten story, Olivia realized that sometimes the most unexpected wagers yielded the most valuable prizes. And sometimes, just sometimes, taking a chance on a long shot was the surest bet of all. 3 years later, the reopened Millfield Public Library gleamed in the summer sunlight, its restored facade and modern interior a perfect blend of historical preservation and contemporary function. Children raced up the steps for the weekly story hour, while students and researchers filled the new computer lab and study rooms. In the special collections room, a framed photograph hung alongside other treasured community artifacts. A chestnut, thoroughbred named Underdog crossing the finish line at Churchill Downs with the caption, "Where it all began." Nearby, Night Whisper gave gentle rides to children at the Sterling Equine Therapy Center just outside town, his racing days behind him, but his heart still touching lives. And in a small office overlooking the library's reading garden, Olivia, Sterling Parker, now regional director of the Sterling Foundation's Literacy Initiative, looked up from her grant proposals to see her husband leaning against the doorframe. "Ready for lunch?" Maxwell asked, holding up a picnic basket. "I thought we could eat by the fountain. Only if you remembered the triple chocolate ice cream." He produced it with a flourish. "Some gambles are worth taking, Mrs. Sterling Parker." Olivia smiled, remembering their first real conversation. "Only things of actual value, Mr. Sterling." As they walked through the library hand in hand, nodding to Mrs. Abernathy, who now had a fully funded position as historical archivist, Olivia reflected that sometimes the longest odds led to the greatest victories, and that the most valuable things in life rarely came with a price tag.
What if the child you thought you could never have arrived when your marriage was already shattered, forcing you to confront a past you desperately tried to escape and a future you never imagined? Daniel Wallace, the voice, sharp and unexpected, made him turn instantly. Daniel stopped smiling for the cameras, his blood running cold. There she was, Sarah, holding a baby, her eyes wide, looking at him as if she'd seen a ghost. "Sarah?" he murmured, feeling the world around him suddenly tilt. The grand opening of the new pediatric wing at St. Jude's Hospital fading into a distant blur. Politicians, doctors, and journalists filled the freshly painted hallway, a symphony of polite chatter and flashing cameras. But Daniel heard nothing. He only saw his ex-wife, thinner than he remembered, with dark circles under her eyes, holding a baby that couldn't be more than 3 months old. "We need to talk," Sarah said, her voice firm, as she approached him with determined steps. "What are you doing here?" Daniel looked at the tiny bundle in her arms, a hollow ache forming in his stomach. "Whose is it?" Sarah looked him directly in the eyes, without blinking, without hesitation. "He's yours." The words fell like stones, heavy and devastating. Daniel stumbled back, colliding with a nurse passing by with a tray. "That's impossible," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "You can't." "The doctors said." "The doctors were wrong," Sarah stated, adjusting the baby in her arms. "His name is Benjamin. He's 2 months old." Daniel did a quick mental calculation. 2 months. That meant Sarah had been pregnant during their bitter divorce, during the endless, soul-crushing fights, during the entire hell they had lived through before finally, mercifully separating. "Why didn't you tell me anything? When you were screaming that you never wanted to see me again? Or when you changed your phone number?" A journalist, sensing a story, approached with a camera, but Daniel waved him away with a curt, dismissive gesture. "Not here," he said, taking Sarah's arm, his touch surprisingly gentle despite the turmoil raging within him. "Let's go outside." They left the bustling hospital in a strained, heavy silence. Daniel walked like a robot, unsure what to do with his hands, what to say, how to even breathe. Sarah followed him until they reached a small park across from the imposing hospital building. "Are you sure?" Daniel finally asked, his gaze fixed on the sleeping baby, a tiny, innocent life. "I had a DNA test done," Sarah replied, pulling an envelope from her worn bag. 3 times. Daniel grabbed the papers with trembling hands. The numbers didn't lie. 99.9% probability of paternity. His name, Sarah's name, and Benjamin Wallace. My God. He sank onto a park bench, the world spinning around him. How is this possible? The miracle we waited for, hoped for, prayed for. It arrived just when we were no longer a family. Sarah sat beside him, gently rocking the baby. Ironic, isn't it? Daniel remembered the years of painful fertility treatments, the endless injections, the hope shattered month after month, the fights that began as whispers and ended as screams, the chilling coldness that had settled between them, turning them into strangers sharing a bed. "I tried to find you," Sarah continued, her voice soft, filled with a quiet pain. "I went to your office, but they told me you'd changed jobs. I called your sister, but she hung up on me. I even went to your apartment, but you didn't live there anymore. I moved after the divorce," Daniel murmured, running a hand through his already disheveled hair. "I couldn't stay in the same place. I know. That's why I stopped trying." Benjamin stirred in Sarah's arms and opened his eyes. Daniel leaned closer to see him better and felt something he had never felt before, a profound, unexpected connection. The baby had his eyes, his nose, but Sarah's mouth. "Can I?" He hesitantly extended his hands. Sarah paused for a moment, then gently handed him the baby. Daniel received him as if he were made of glass, terrified he might break. "Hello, Benjamin," he whispered, and the baby seemed to recognize his voice, because he stopped moving, his gaze fixed on Daniel's face. "I'm your dad." The words came out on their own, unbidden, and as he said them, Daniel felt something shatter inside his chest, something that had been locked away, guarded, for 2 long years. What if the ghosts of a bitter past resurfaced with the dawn, forcing 2 broken souls to confront the devastating consequences of their choices and the fragile hope of a future they never dared to imagine? Daniel couldn't sleep that night. He lay awake in his stark, minimalist apartment, staring at the ceiling, his mind a relentless whirlwind of memories he had tried so desperately to bury for 2 long years. At 6 in the morning, his phone still clutched in his hand, he dialed the number Sarah had given him the day before. "Hello." Sarah's voice sounded tired, worn. "It's Daniel. Can I come see you?" "It's 6 in the morning," she replied, a hint of surprise in her voice. "I couldn't sleep. We need to talk." Sarah sighed on the other end of the line. "All right, but meet me at the corner of Maple and Oak Street. I don't want my sister to see you yet." 40 minutes later, Daniel stood on the designated street corner, the early morning air crisp and cool. Sarah arrived, pushing an old, slightly battered stroller, with Benjamin sleeping soundly inside. "There's a coffee shop nearby," she said without greeting him, her expression guarded. They walked in silence until they reached a small, unassuming cafe just opening for the day. They sat at a table in the back, the scent of freshly brewed coffee hanging in the air. Daniel ordered 2 coffees and found himself staring at Benjamin, who was still peacefully asleep. "When did you know you were pregnant?" he finally asked, his voice low. 3 weeks after we signed the divorce papers," Sarah replied, stirring sugar into her coffee, her gaze distant. "At first, I thought it was stress. I had lost a lot of weight and my period was late. But then the nausea started." Daniel remembered those last, agonizing weeks of their marriage. The constant, bitter fights, the silences that stretched for days, the icy wall that had grown between them, seemingly impenetrable. "Do you remember our last fight?" Sarah asked, her voice barely a whisper. Daniel nodded. How could he ever forget? It was the night Sarah had found the divorce papers on his desk. "You said you couldn't keep living with a woman who couldn't give you children." Sarah looked directly at him, her eyes filled with a raw, lingering pain. That you didn't see me as a woman anymore, just a constant, painful reminder of your failure. Sarah, Daniel began, his voice hoarse with regret. I'm not finished, she interrupted, her hand raised slightly. That night, you told me you'd met someone else. Someone younger, someone who could give you what I couldn't. Daniel closed his eyes, shame washing over him. He had lied. There had been no one else. He just wanted to hurt her as much as he was hurting. It was a lie, he whispered, the admission tasting like ash in his mouth. There was no one else. I know, Sarah said, a humorless smile touching her lips. Your sister told me later. But at that moment, it hurt so much I just wanted to disappear. Benjamin stirred in his stroller and began to cry softly. Sarah picked him up and gently rocked him. When I found out I was pregnant, my first instinct was to find you, she continued, her voice thick with emotion. I was happy. I thought maybe we could try again, that this baby would give us a second chance. What happened? Daniel asked, his heart aching. I went to your office. Your secretary told me you had resigned and she didn't know where you were working now. Then I went to your apartment, but the doorman said you didn't live there anymore. Daniel remembered those first few months after the divorce. He had moved to a different neighborhood, changed jobs, erased everything that reminded him of Sarah, of their shared life, of their shared pain. He had even changed his phone number. I called your sister, Sarah continued, gently patting Benjamin's back. I explained the situation. I told her I was pregnant and that I needed to talk to you. She told me you were very happy in your new life, that you'd met someone and the last thing you wanted was to hear from me. She asked me not to bother you anymore. Daniel felt a surge of rage. Rage at his sister for her cruel lies. Rage at himself for disappearing. Rage at the entire impossible situation. After that, I stopped looking for you. Sarah looked out the window, her gaze distant. I decided I would raise Benjamin alone. That if you didn't want to know anything about me, you wouldn't want to know anything about him either. But yesterday, why did you look for me yesterday? Daniel pressed, his voice urgent. Sarah turned back to him, her eyes filled with a raw, maternal fear. Benjamin got sick last week. Pneumonia. He was in the hospital for 2 days. When I saw him so small, so fragile, with all those tubes, I thought he was going to die. Her voice cracked, tears welling in her eyes. That night, while he slept in the hospital crib, I realized that if something happened to him, you would never know you'd had a son. And that wasn't fair, not to you and not to him. Daniel reached out and tentatively touched her hand across the table. Sarah, I never wanted. I know, she said, not pulling her hand away. We both said horrible things. We both hurt each other. But this is different. Benjamin isn't to blame for our mistakes. Daniel looked at his son, who was now awake, observing him with a curious, innocent gaze. Can I hold him? Sarah handed him over without hesitation this time. Daniel held him with more confidence than the day before. Hello, big guy, he whispered. Dad's here now. And for the first time in 2 long years, Daniel felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. What if the unexpected role of fatherhood began to heal a broken man, only for a sudden crisis to threaten the fragile new life they were tentatively building, forcing him to confront his deepest fears and fight for the woman who had unknowingly brought him back to life? 2 weeks after that first, hesitant meeting at the coffee shop, Daniel had begun to visit Sarah and Benjamin every day. He'd arrive after work, laden with diapers, formula, and brightly colored toys the baby couldn't even use yet, a clumsy offering of his newfound commitment. That afternoon, they had gone to Benjamin's pediatric checkup together. Daniel insisted on accompanying them, despite Sarah's assurances that it wasn't necessary. He's perfect, the doctor said after examining the baby, her smile warm. He's gained weight well, and his lungs sound clear after the pneumonia. Sarah smiled, a wave of relief washing over her. Daniel also felt a profound sense of calm. During those 2 weeks, he had devoured every book he could find on babies, infant pneumonia, and parental care, a desperate attempt to make up for lost time. Any questions? The doctor asked. Is it normal for him to cry so much at night? Sarah asked, a familiar weariness in her voice. Sometimes it takes hours to calm him down. It could be colic. It's common at this age. Try gently massaging his tummy and… Sarah suddenly put her hand to her head, her face paling. Are you all right? Daniel looked at her, instantly concerned. Yes, just… I got a little dizzy, Sarah stammered, gripping the arm of the chair. It's hot in here, isn't it? The doctor approached her, her expression shifting from professional concern to alarm. When was the last time you ate? Sarah tried to remember. This morning, no, last night. I think… Sarah… Daniel frowned, his voice tight with worry. It's 3 in the afternoon. I've been so busy with Benjamin, she whispered, her voice weak. Sometimes I forget. She couldn't finish the sentence. She slumped in her chair and fell to the floor, unconscious. Sarah! Daniel lunged towards her, but the doctor was already checking her vitals. Call a code, the doctor shouted to the nurse. Now! Everything happened in a blur. A stretcher, paramedics, Daniel running through the hospital corridors with Benjamin in his arms, desperately following Sarah, who lay unconscious, her face a terrifying shade of pale. Are you family? An emergency room doctor asked, his voice urgent. Daniel hesitated, the truth catching in his throat. I'm the father of her son. We need you to sign some papers. We have to operate on her immediately. Operate? Why? Internal bleeding. Probably placental remnants that weren't expelled during childbirth. It's serious, but if we operate now, she'll be okay. Daniel signed everything they put in front of him, his hand shaking uncontrollably. Then he was left alone in the sterile waiting room, with Benjamin, who had started crying, hungry and confused. Easy, big guy, he whispered, rocking him gently. Mommy's going to be okay. But he himself wasn't sure of that. Sarah had looked so pale, so fragile when she collapsed, and he hadn't noticed anything. He hadn't seen the deepening dark circles under her eyes, the subtle weight loss, the profound exhaustion she always seemed to carry. Benjamin continued to cry. Daniel paced the waiting room, a frantic, helpless energy coursing through him. He rocked him, spoke to him softly, but nothing worked. He must be hungry, a passing nurse commented kindly. Do you have his bottle? Daniel checked Sarah's diaper bag and found a bottle and a can of formula, but he had no idea how to prepare it. Can you help me? He asked the nurse, his voice desperate. She showed him how to measure the warm water, how to add the powder, how to shake the bottle. Daniel paid meticulous attention to every detail, as if he were learning to save a life. When he gave Benjamin the bottle, the baby immediately calmed down. Well done, Dad, the nurse smiled. The word still sounded strange to him, foreign, yet it also resonated with a profound, unexpected warmth. 3 agonizing hours passed before the surgeon finally came out to speak with him. The operation was successful, he said, his voice calm, reassuring. We found quite a bit of tissue that needed to be removed. She's stable, but she'll need several days of rest and specialized care. Can I see her? She's still in recovery. Better wait until tomorrow. Daniel stayed at the hospital all night. He slept fitfully in an uncomfortable chair, with Benjamin snuggled against his chest. He woke up every 2 hours to give him a bottle or change his diaper. At 6 in the morning, a nurse told him Sarah had woken up and he could see her. He found her connected to several monitors, and 4 in her arm, but awake. How are you? Daniel approached the bed, Benjamin still cradled in his arms. How do you feel? Like I've been run over by a truck. Sarah tried to smile, her voice weak. You stayed here all night? Daniel nodded. Someone had to take care of Benjamin. Sarah looked at him with an expression Daniel hadn't seen in years. Something akin to gratitude, but deeper, more profound. Thank you, she whispered. You don't have to thank me. He's my son too. Sarah closed her eyes, still weak from the anesthesia. The doctor said I'll be here for several days. Don't worry about that. I'll take care of Benjamin. Daniel, you don't know how to. I'll learn, he interrupted, his voice firm. I already learned how to make a bottle last night. How hard can the rest be? For the first time since they had reconnected, Sarah truly smiled, a genuine, unforced smile that reached her eyes. What happens when the harsh realities of parenthood strip away a man's carefully constructed defenses, forcing him to confront his past mistakes and embrace a vulnerability he never knew he possessed? Daniel hadn't slept more than 2 consecutive hours all week. Benjamin, it turned out, had a particular fondness for crying between 2 and 4 in the morning, regardless of Daniel's desperate attempts to soothe him. He had temporarily moved into a furnished apartment near the hospital to be closer to Sarah and visit her every day. The place was small and sterile, but it had the basics: a bed, a kitchen, and a bathroom. "Good morning, champ," he whispered to Benjamin as he prepared his bottle, his voice rough with fatigue. "Did you sleep well? Because I didn't." The baby looked at him with his big, round eyes, as if understanding that his dad was learning everything on the fly. Daniel had bought books on infant care, watched countless videos on the internet, and even called his sister for advice, though he was still annoyed with her for lying to Sarah. "How could you not know how to change a diaper?" his sister had yelled over the phone. "What world have you been living in all these years? A world without babies," Daniel had retorted as he struggled to put a diaper on Benjamin without it falling off. After feeding Benjamin breakfast, Daniel quickly showered, dressed, and they headed to the hospital. Sarah was better, but still very weak. The doctors had said she needed at least another week of hospitalization. "You look terrible," she told Daniel when he entered her room with Benjamin in his arms. "Thanks. You look like you've been run over by a bus too," he quipped, a tired smile on his face. Sarah laughed softly. "How did he behave last night?" "Like all babies, I suppose." He cried, ate, pooped, slept for an hour, and then started all over again. Daniel sat in the chair beside her bed and handed Benjamin to Sarah. She received him with a gentle smile, and the baby immediately quieted in her arms. "He's hungry again," Sarah said. "Did you bring the bottle? Here it is." Daniel handed it to her and watched as Sarah fed their son. There was something so natural, so perfect in that gesture that he suddenly felt like an intruder. "What are you thinking about?" Sarah asked, noticing his silence. "That I don't know if I'm doing things right," he confessed, his voice low. "Yesterday, he fell while I was changing his diaper. He wasn't hurt. But, Daniel, no one is born knowing how to be a dad. You learn by doing. You seem to know everything." "Because I've had 2 more months of practice than you," she replied, a soft smile on her lips. "And believe me, at first I was terrified too." Daniel leaned back in the chair, exhausted. "You know what's the strangest thing?" he said, his voice thoughtful. "All these years, I thought being a dad would be different. More, I don't know, easier, more natural. And it isn't? It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life." He paused, a surprising vulnerability in his eyes. "But it's also the only thing that has made sense in a very long time." Sarah looked at him attentively. "Do you regret it?" "Regret what? That I showed up in your life? That I complicated everything?" Daniel considered the question, his gaze distant. "No. I regret losing the first 2 months. I regret not being there when you needed me. I regret many things, Sarah, but not this. Not him." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the sounds of the hospital. Machines beeping, nurses walking down the hallways, other babies crying in nearby rooms. "Daniel," Sarah finally said, "when I get out of here, what's going to happen?" "What do you mean?" "To us. To this situation. We can't go on like this forever." Daniel knew she was right. They couldn't keep living in limbo, visiting each other in the hospital, pretending everything was normal. "I don't know," he admitted, his voice honest. "What do you want to happen?" "I want Benjamin to have a present father, not a weekend visitor. Truly present." "That's what I want too," Daniel affirmed. "But I don't want us to do this out of obligation. I don't want you to feel trapped." Daniel leaned forward in his chair. "Sarah, look at me." She lifted her gaze. "I don't feel trapped. I feel I don't know how to explain it. I feel complete for the first time in years. But us, we're ancient history. This is different. This is about Benjamin. And about being better people than we were before. Sarah nodded slowly. And what if it doesn't work? What if we start fighting like before? Then we'll find a way to make it work, Daniel declared, his voice firm, resolute. Because he needs us both. Benjamin had finished eating and had fallen asleep in Sarah's arms. Daniel reached out and gently caressed his little head. I promise you something, he whispered to the baby. You'll never have to choose between mom and dad again. We're going to find a way to be a family. Different, but a family nonetheless. Sarah smiled, and for the first time in days, Daniel felt that everything was going to be okay. What if leaving the confines of a hospital room forced a fragile family to confront the daunting reality of their future, and a shared fear of repeating past mistakes led to a courageous leap of faith? Sarah woke up in a bed that wasn't hers, in a room that smelled of unfamiliar detergent and freshly brewed coffee. For a disorienting moment, she felt lost, until she heard Daniel's soft voice speaking to Benjamin in the kitchen. Good morning, champ. Are you hungry? Dad already has your bottle ready. 5 days had passed since Sarah had been discharged from the hospital. Daniel had insisted she stay in the main bedroom while he slept on the living room sofa. Sarah rose slowly, still feeling weak, and walked towards the kitchen. Daniel was sitting at the table, feeding Benjamin with one hand while scrolling through his phone with the other. Good morning, Sarah said, her voice still a little hoarse. Good morning. Did you sleep well? Yes. Did he wake up last night? Once around 3, but he went back to sleep quickly. I think we're finally getting into a rhythm. Sarah poured herself a cup of coffee and sat across from Daniel. She had grown accustomed to these quiet mornings, to watching Daniel care for Benjamin with a natural ease that still surprised her. Do you have to work today? She asked. Just a few hours this afternoon. My partner is covering most of my cases. Daniel owned his own law firm. Sarah remembered how he used to work until very late, even on weekends. Seeing how he had completely reorganized his life for Benjamin filled her with a mix of gratitude and lingering confusion. You don't have to do this, you know, Sarah said softly. Do what? Change your whole life. Miss work. Sleep on the sofa. Daniel put down his phone and looked at her, his gaze steady. Sarah, I have a son. My life has already changed forever, and I like how it's changing. Benjamin finished his bottle, and Daniel gently placed him on his shoulder to burp him. Besides, he continued, I'm not missing work. I'm working from home when Benjamin sleeps, and the sofa is surprisingly comfortable. But, no buts. This is what I want to do. Sarah took a sip of coffee. It still felt surreal that this calm, attentive man was the same Daniel who used to explode when things didn't go his way. What are you thinking about? Daniel asked, noticing her silence. How different you are. Different how? Before, when something didn't go according to your plans, you'd get furious. You'd shut down, push people away. Now, I don't know, you seem calmer. Daniel smiled as he gently tickled Benjamin's tummy. It's because I understand something now that I didn't understand before. That you can't control everything. And that's okay. Benjamin wakes me up when he wants, cries when he needs something, sleeps when he feels like it. And I adapt. I don't try to change him. Sarah felt a strange warmth in her chest, something akin to hope, but she didn't dare name it. Before, I went crazy that we couldn't have children, Daniel continued, his voice thoughtful. I felt it was my responsibility to fix everything, to find the perfect solution. And when I couldn't, I got frustrated with you, with myself, with the world. You were frustrated with me because I couldn't get pregnant, Sarah whispered, the old pain still a faint echo. Yes, and that was wrong. It wasn't your fault. It wasn't anyone's fault. Daniel stood and placed Benjamin in his high chair. You know what I realized caring for Benjamin? What? That love isn't about trying to fix everything. It's about being present when things fall apart. Sarah felt tears welling in her eyes. Sarah, I'm not saying this so we can get back together, he clarified quickly. I just want you to know that I understand why our marriage didn't work. And if someday you decide to give me another chance, not as a husband, but as, I don't know, as a partner in this parenting thing, it'll be different. Sarah wiped her tears with the back of her hand. You scare me, she said, her voice trembling. Why? Because I'm starting to believe you, and I don't want to get my hopes up just to be hurt again. Daniel approached and knelt beside her chair. Sarah, look at me. She lifted her gaze. I'm not going to promise that we'll never fight again. I'm not going to promise I'll be perfect. But I do promise that I'll never disappear again when things get tough. Benjamin needs me, and you do too. I don't need you, Sarah said, but without conviction. Maybe you don't need me as a husband, but you do need me as your son's father. And I need you to trust me so I can be a good one. Sarah looked at him for a long moment. Daniel had dark circles under his eyes, wrinkled clothes, and 2 days' worth of stubble. But he also had something in his eyes she hadn't seen before. Peace, determination, something akin to genuine maturity. Okay, she finally said. Okay, what? I'll try to trust you again. But slowly, very slowly. Daniel smiled and took her hand. Slowly is perfect. We have all the time in the world. Benjamin started making soft noises from his high chair, as if agreeing with the conversation. See, Daniel said. Even Benjamin approves of the plan. For the first time in a long time, Sarah laughed. A genuine, unburdened laugh. What if the most challenging decisions pave the way for the most profound happiness, and a family, born from unexpected circumstances, learns to build its future on trust, shared responsibility, and a love that dares to hope. 3 months had passed since Sarah and Benjamin temporarily moved in with Daniel. What had begun as an emergency solution had slowly, imperceptibly, transformed into a comfortable, natural routine. Sarah no longer slept in the main bedroom. After much discussion, they had decided she would take over the study, which had been converted into a cozy bedroom, while Daniel continued to sleep on the sofa. Benjamin's crib was placed in the hallway, a quiet sentinel between their 2 rooms. One night, Sarah woke up because she didn't hear Benjamin crying. It was 2 in the morning, and it was unusual for him not to have woken up asking for food. Concerned, she got out of bed and walked towards the crib. It was empty. She heard soft voices coming from the living room and cautiously walked towards them. Daniel was sitting on the sofa, with Benjamin awake in his arms, speaking to him in a low, gentle voice. Your mom is very brave, you know? Daniel was saying to the baby. Braver than Dad. She took care of you all by herself for 2 months. And I didn't even know you existed. Sarah stayed hidden behind the wall, listening, her heart aching with a complex mix of emotions. Dad was very foolish before, Daniel continued. He thought he knew everything, but he knew nothing. He didn't know how to love well. He didn't know how to take care of Mommy when she needed him. Benjamin made soft cooing sounds, as if understanding. But now Dad is learning. I'm learning that love isn't about trying to change people. It's about accepting them as they are and being there when they need you. Sarah felt a tightness in her chest. And Mommy? Daniel's voice dropped to a whisper. Mommy is the strongest person I know. That's why Dad fell in love with her many years ago, and that's why he's still in love, even if she doesn't know it. Sarah held her breath, her eyes stinging with unshed tears. But don't worry, champ, Daniel continued, his voice soft, reassuring. Dad isn't going to pressure Mommy. He's going to wait. He's going to show her with actions that he's changed, because words are carried away by the wind, but actions remain forever. Daniel fell silent for a moment, gently rocking Benjamin. You know what's the craziest thing about all this? He continued. That it took me all these months to realize that I already have everything I ever wanted. A family. Not the perfect family I had imagined, but a real family. With problems, with fears, but real. Sarah felt tears stream down her face. Mommy is afraid Dad will hurt her again, Daniel whispered to the baby. And she's right to be afraid. Dad hurt her a lot before. But now Dad knows that love isn't a competition you win or lose. It's a daily job. It's waking up every night when you cry. It's making coffee in the mornings. It's being present. Daniel stood up from the sofa and walked towards the window with Benjamin. "Look, it's raining," he said to the baby. "Mommy likes the rain. Before, when we were married, she would spend hours looking at the rain from the kitchen window. Dad never understood why, but now I think I get it. The rain cleans everything. It makes everything start anew." Sarah couldn't stay hidden any longer. She stepped out from behind the wall. "Since when do you talk so much?" she asked, her voice soft, a gentle tease. Daniel turned, surprised. "Sarah, I didn't know you were awake. I woke up because I didn't hear Benjamin crying. I thought something had happened. He woke up an hour ago, but he was calm. He just wanted company." Sarah approached them. "How much did you hear?" Daniel asked, a little embarrassed. "Enough." They stood in silence, looking at each other. Benjamin yawned in Daniel's arms. "Is it true?" Sarah finally asked. "What you told him? What part?" "Everything. That you're still in love. That this is all you ever wanted." Daniel looked her directly in the eyes. "Every word." Sarah felt the air leave her lungs. "Daniel," she began, but he interrupted her. "You don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know, not to pressure you, but to be honest." Sarah stepped closer, so close she could feel the warmth of his body. "You know what's the craziest thing?" she whispered, echoing his earlier words. "What?" "That I'm still in love with you too. And that terrifies me." Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, a wave of emotion washing over him. "Sarah, these past months, watching how you care for Benjamin, how you care for me, how you've become this incredibly present man, it's like you're the person I always hoped you would be." "I'm the person I always wanted to be," he corrected gently. "I just needed a reason to change." Sarah reached out and took Benjamin from his arms. The baby had fallen asleep. "I'm going to put him to bed," she said. When she returned from the hallway, Daniel was still standing in the same spot. "Daniel," Sarah said. "Yes? Can you hold me?" He didn't hesitate for a second. He pulled her into a strong embrace, as if he had been waiting years for that moment. "I love you," Daniel whispered in her ear. "I never stopped loving you." "I love you too," Sarah responded, her voice muffled against his chest. "And that scares me so much." "Me too," he admitted. "But I think it's worth the risk." They stood embraced under the gentle patter of rain against the window, feeling as if they were beginning something completely new. 6 months after that rainy night, Daniel woke up to the familiar sound of Benjamin babbling in his crib. He no longer cried so much in the early hours. Now he woke up making soft noises, as if conversing with an invisible friend. Daniel got up from the sofa and walked towards the hallway. Sarah was already there, holding Benjamin and whispering things in his ear. "Good morning," Daniel said, approaching to give Sarah a kiss on the cheek and another on Benjamin's forehead. "Good morning. Did you sleep well on that sofa?" "Like a king." It was a lie. The sofa was uncomfortable, and Daniel already had back pain, but he didn't complain. It had been his decision to keep sleeping there, even though Sarah had suggested several times that they buy a larger bed to share. "Daniel," Sarah said as she changed Benjamin's diaper, "we need to talk about something." "Tell me." "My sister called yesterday. They want to sell the house where I'm renting the room. I have to find another place." Daniel felt a knot in his stomach. For all these months, he had avoided thinking about the moment when Sarah and Benjamin would leave. He had grown so accustomed to waking up and seeing them there, to preparing breakfast for 3, to their shared routines. "Do you know where you're going to look?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "That's the problem. With my part-time salary, I can't afford a decent apartment in a safe neighborhood. And Benjamin needs space for when he starts crawling." Daniel finished preparing the coffee while Sarah fed the baby. "Sarah," he finally said, "I have a proposition." "What is it?" "Stay here. Permanently." Sarah looked up from Benjamin, surprised. "Daniel, we already talked about this. Not as a favor, not as something temporary. As family." "What do you mean?" Daniel sat across from her at the kitchen table. "I mean, let's look for a bigger house. For the 3 of us. Where Benjamin has his own room, where you have your space, where I can stop sleeping on the sofa. Sarah didn't respond immediately. But we're not a couple married? Daniel smiled. We don't need labels, Sarah. We're a family. Different, but family. Benjamin needs us both. And honestly, I need you too. Daniel, listen to me. I'm not asking you to go back to what we were before. I'm asking you to build something new, something better. Sarah looked at Benjamin, who had fallen asleep after eating. And what if it doesn't work? What if we start fighting like before? Then we face the problems together. As adults, as responsible parents. Sarah thought for several minutes. What kind of house? Daniel smiled, understanding that her question meant she was considering his proposal. One with a garden so Benjamin can play when he grows up. With a big kitchen where we can cook together. With 3 bedrooms. One for you, one for him, one for me. Separate rooms? For now, yes. No pressure. Let's go step by step. Sarah stood and walked to the window, still holding a sleeping Benjamin. You know what scares me the most? She said without turning. What? That I like the idea. I like it a lot. And that scares me because it means I'm really trusting you again. Daniel approached and stood behind her. And is that bad? No, but it's terrifying. For me too. But I think it's worth the risk. Sarah turned to look at him. Do you really think we can do this? Be a family without being a couple? I think we can try. And if along the way we realize we want something more, it will be because we really want it, not out of obligation or for Benjamin. Sarah nodded slowly. Okay, let's look for a house. Daniel felt such immense joy that he thought his heart would burst from his chest. Really? Really? But with conditions. Anything you want. First, we share all expenses equally. I don't want you to feel like you're supporting me. Agreed. Second, important decisions about Benjamin we make together. Of course. And third, if either of us feels this isn't working, we talk. No shouting. No slamming doors. No disappearing. Daniel extended his hand. Deal. Sarah shook it. Deal. That afternoon, they went out to look at houses. Daniel drove while Sarah reviewed classified ads on her phone, and Benjamin slept in his car seat. Look at this one, Sarah said. 3 bedrooms. Garden. Close to the school and the hospital. And it's within our budget. Our budget. Daniel smiled. I like the sound of that. Sarah smiled too. Me too. For the first time in years, Daniel felt that the future wasn't scary. It was hopeful. What if the greatest reward wasn't an empire, but the simple joy of family, proving that true happiness is built not on convenience, but on unwavering love, shared laughter, and the courage to embrace a future you never dared to dream of. A year later, the Sunday morning dawned bright and sunny, and Sarah woke to the sound of laughter drifting in from the garden. She peeked through her bedroom window and saw Daniel chasing Benjamin, who, now at 14 months, was walking everywhere, his tiny legs a blur of motion. Daddy, Daddy! Benjamin shrieked, running into Daniel's open arms. Sarah smiled, her heart swelling with a quiet joy. Benjamin's first words had been Mama, but Daddy had followed soon after. Daniel had cried that day, shamelessly, like a child. She put on her robe and went down to the kitchen. The house they had chosen was perfect. Not too big, but comfortable, with a garden where Benjamin could play and a spacious kitchen where the 3 of them ate breakfast together every morning. Good morning, sleepyhead, Daniel said as she entered the garden. Good morning. How long have you 2 been awake? Since 7. Someone decided that Sundays are also for waking up early. Benjamin ran towards Sarah and hugged her legs. Mama, Mama, he shouted, raising his arms for her to pick him up. Sarah lifted him and showered him with kisses. How's my little prince? Were you good for Daddy? Very good, Daniel replied, a playful grin on his face. He only ate a handful of dirt and tried to escape 3 times. Sarah laughed. A normal day then. Daniel had prepared breakfast for all 3 of them. Scrambled eggs, toast, and freshly squeezed orange juice. It was a routine they had naturally developed. He cooked on Sundays. She cooked the rest of the week. What do you want to do today? Daniel asked as he cut Benjamin's toast into tiny pieces. We could go to the park. We haven't taken Benjamin to the swings in a while. Good idea. As they ate breakfast, Sarah observed the scene. Daniel helping Benjamin eat, patiently wiping his face when he got messy, speaking to him with infinite patience. Benjamin laughing and babbling words only they understood. It was strange to think that 2 years ago they were divorced and barely speaking. Now, she couldn't imagine her life without these mornings, without these routines, without this family they had built from scratch. What are you thinking about? Daniel asked, noticing her silence. How strange all this is. Strange how? Strange good. 2 years ago, I thought I'd never be able to trust you again. And now what? Now I can't imagine my life without you. Daniel stopped eating and looked at her, his eyes soft. Sarah, I'm not saying I want to get married again, she clarified quickly. I'm just saying that what we have now is perfect for me. Daniel smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile. For me too. Really? You don't miss having a girlfriend, going out to parties, being single? Are you crazy? Trade this for going out to parties. Daniel stood and approached her. Sarah, these have been the best months of my life. Not the best months since the divorce. The best of my entire life. But we're not a couple? Dating? We don't need to be anything specific. We're Daniel, Sarah, and Benjamin. We're family. Sarah felt a warm glow spread through her chest. I like the sound of that. Me too. Benjamin started banging the table with his little spoon, demanding attention. Park! Park! He shouted. We're going, impatient one, Sarah said, wiping his face. An hour later, they were at the park. Daniel pushed Benjamin on the swing while Sarah took photos with her phone. Higher, Daddy! Benjamin shrieked, laughing. Higher, are you sure? Yes, higher. Sarah watched them from the bench where she was sitting. Daniel had changed so much since he became Benjamin's dad. He was more patient, more present, more affectionate, as if fatherhood had brought out the best in him. After the park, they went to a family restaurant for lunch. Benjamin behaved well, ate almost all his lunch, and only threw food on the floor twice. Total success, Daniel said as he cleaned under Benjamin's high chair. Back home, Benjamin fell asleep in the car. I'll take him to his crib, Daniel whispered when they arrived. Sarah stayed in the kitchen preparing tea. When Daniel came down, he sat across from her. Sarah, he said, there's something I want to ask you. What? Are you happy? Sarah didn't expect that question. Why are you asking me that? Because I want to make sure this is what you really want. I don't want you to feel trapped or think you have to stay because of Benjamin. Sarah took a sip of tea before answering. Daniel, 2 years ago, I thought happiness was something I had lost forever. I thought after everything we went through, I'd never be able to be truly happy again. And now I wake up every morning grateful. Grateful for Benjamin. For you, for this house, for this life we built together. Sarah reached out and touched Daniel's hand. I'm happy. Happier than I thought was possible. Daniel smiled and intertwined his fingers with hers. Me too. They sat like that, holding hands, listening to the sounds of the house. The kitchen clock, the refrigerator humming, Benjamin's soft sighs sleeping upstairs. They weren't the perfect family they had imagined years ago. They were something better. They were real. Were you moved by this story of love, loss, and redemption? Daniel and Sarah showed us that sometimes second chances arrive when we least expect them, and that true love doesn't always follow the path we planned. Their story with Benjamin teaches us that families are built day by day, with patience, understanding, and the courage to forgive. If this story touched your heart as much as it did ours, don't forget to like this video and share it with someone you think needs to hear that it's always possible to start over. We'd love to know your opinion on Daniel, Sarah, and little Benjamin's story. Do you think they did the right thing by trying to build a family without immediately becoming a couple again? Did you identify with any of the characters? Leave your comments below. Every one of them is very valuable to us. If you enjoyed this content and want to keep listening to stories that go straight to the soul, Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so you don't miss any new stories. And tell us, where are you watching us from? We love knowing that our stories reach hearts all over the world.
The sharp click of designer heels echoed through the marble corridor of Westbrook University's economics building. 22-year-old Eliza Winters clutched her presentation folder, knuckles white against the cheap plastic. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a desperate prisoner. Today was the day, the final presentation that would determine her scholarship renewal. "Look who decided to show up," sneered Vanessa Ashcroft, heiress to the Ashcroft Hotel's empire. She leaned against the wall surrounded by her equally privileged friends. "Still wearing your thrift shop finest, I see." Eliza straightened her second-hand blazer, bought with 3 months of tip money from her waitressing job. "At least I earned everything I'm wearing," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. Behind Vanessa stood Connor Montgomery, his steel blue eyes observing the exchange with an unreadable expression. As the son of business mogul Lawrence Montgomery, Connor had never spoken a word to Eliza, but his silent presence at these humiliations felt like complicity. "Earned?" Vanessa laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "Let's see what you've earned after your presentation. I heard Professor Harrington already has reservations." Eliza's blood ran cold. Professor Harrington was known for favoring students with connections. Connections Eliza decidedly lacked. Inside the lecture hall, Eliza set up her presentation with trembling hands. The room filled with students, Connor and Vanessa taking seats in the front row. Professor Harrington nodded curtly, signaling her to begin. "My thesis proposes a sustainable microfinance model for rural communities," Eliza began, her voice finding strength as she spoke about the project she'd poured her soul into. For 15 minutes, she presented flawlessly, her passion evident in every carefully researched point. Then came the questions. "Interesting theory, Miss Winters," Professor Harrington said, his tone suggesting otherwise. "But how would this work without significant capital investment? Perhaps Mr. Montgomery would care to comment on the practical limitations." Connor stood, adjusting his perfectly tailored suit. "Actually," he began, and Eliza braced herself, "I think Winters has accounted for the capital constraints quite brilliantly." A stunned silence fell over the room. Her proposal leverages community resources in a way most traditional models overlook, Connor continued, his voice gaining confidence. "It's innovative." Professor Harrington's jaw tightened. "Well, that's one perspective. However, what happened next would haunt Eliza for years. As if choreographed, Vanessa's coffee cup tipped over, sending dark liquid cascading across Eliza's presentation materials and laptop. The computer sparked, smoking slightly, along with Eliza's hopes of retaining her scholarship. "Oops," Vanessa said, not bothering to hide her smile. Humiliated tears threatened as Eliza tried desperately to save her work, aware of the snickers rippling through the room. Connor made a move as if to help, then stopped when Vanessa caught his arm. "Miss Winters," Professor Harrington sighed, "without your supporting materials, I'm afraid I can't adequately assess your work. Your scholarship status will have to be reconsidered." In that moment, Eliza looked directly at Connor Montgomery, their eyes locking in a moment of uncomfortable recognition. She saw something there, pity perhaps or guilt, before she gathered her ruined materials and fled the hall. She never returned to Westbrook University. 15 years later, "Mom, the sink's doing that thing again," called 11-year-old Theo from the kitchen of their modest apartment. Eliza Winters, now 37 and owner of Second Chances, a small bookstore cafe in the heart of Millfield, rushed in with a wrench. "Stand back, repairwoman extraordinaire coming through," she announced with mock heroism, making her son laugh. Life hadn't turned out as she'd planned after that fateful day at Westbrook, but she'd built something meaningful, a cozy business that welcomed everyone regardless of their background, and a home filled with love for Theo, whose father had disappeared before he was born. "Why don't we just call a real plumber?" Theo asked, adjusting his glasses. "Because real plumbers cost real money," Eliza replied, grunting as she tightened a fitting. "And this month's budget is already spoken. For with your science camp." The leak stopped and Eliza triumphantly raised her wrench like Excalibur. "See? Who needs a degree when you have YouTube tutorials?" Theo rolled his eyes affectionately. "Mom, you're so—" A crash from outside interrupted them. They rushed to the window overlooking the alley behind their apartment building. There, sprawled amid fallen trash cans, lay an elderly man in what had once been expensive clothing, now dirty and disheveled. "Call 911, Eliza instructed Theo, already rushing for the door. In the alley, she knelt beside the man who was conscious but clearly disoriented. "Sir, can you hear me? Are you hurt?" His eyes, a familiar steel blue, focused on her face with confusion. I don't know where I am," he murmured. "Or who I am." As Eliza helped him sit up, she noticed the fine quality of his weathered clothing beneath the dirt, the manicured hands now scraped from his fall, and most importantly, the blank terror in his eyes, the look of someone who had lost himself completely. "It's okay," she reassured him, taking his trembling hand. "We'll figure this out together." Little did she know that this moment of kindness would collide her world with the one she'd left behind 15 years ago, and with the man who had witnessed her greatest humiliation. The paramedics insisted on taking the elderly man to the hospital despite his protests. Eliza found herself inexplicably concerned about the confused gentleman and volunteered to accompany him. "You don't have to come with me," the man said, his aristocratic accent surfacing through his confusion. "I know," Eliza replied, climbing into the ambulance beside him. "But nobody should face hospitals alone." Theo, ever pragmatic, had called Mrs. Gonzalez from upstairs to stay with him and promised to handle the evening rush at the bookstore cafe. At 12, he sometimes seemed 30, a thought that both filled Eliza with pride and broke her heart a little. At St. Mary's Hospital, the man was admitted for tests while Eliza waited, scrolling through emails on her phone. The cafe's rent was increasing again, another problem for another day. "Excuse me," a nurse approached. "Are you family?" "No, She's with me," the elderly man called weakly from his bed. "Please let her stay." The nurse nodded and left them alone. "Thank you," he said. "I don't know why, but you seem trustworthy." "I'm Eliza Winters," she said, extending her hand. He took it, frowning in concentration. "I wish I could tell you my name. How about I call you Mr. Blue? For your eyes." Those eyes, still sharp despite his condition, crinkled with amusement. "Mr. Blue it is." The doctor eventually arrived with the results. "Good news and bad news," she explained. "Physically, you're in remarkable shape for a man in his 70s, but you're experiencing severe retrograde amnesia, likely triggered by emotional trauma rather than physical injury." "Will I get my memory back?" Mr. Blue asked. "Most likely, yes, but it could take days, weeks, or longer." When the doctor left, Eliza made a rash decision. "You need somewhere to stay while you recover." "I couldn't impose. We have a pull-out sofa," she insisted. "Unless you'd prefer a shelter?" The look of quiet panic on his distinguished face made the decision for both of them. 3 days later, Mr. Blue had become part of their small family routine. He insisted on helping at the bookstore, revealing an unexpected talent for organization and an encyclopedic knowledge of classic literature despite his amnesia. Muscle memory, he explained, alphabetizing a shelf of novels. Apparently, I was quite the reader. Eliza watched him charm customers with witty literary references he didn't remember learning. There was something familiar about him, something she couldn't quite place. That evening, as they closed up shop, the bell above, the door jingled. Eliza looked up to see a tall man in an impeccably tailored suit. Her blood froze. 15 years hadn't changed him much. Still unfairly handsome, still radiating that quiet confidence that came from never having to worry about money. Connor Montgomery. "I'm sorry, we're closed," she managed, her voice steadier than her hands. His eyes, the same steel blue as Mr. Blue's, widened in recognition. "Eliza? Eliza Winters?" Before she could respond, Theo bounded from the back room. "Mom, Mr. Blue showed me how to make real Italian espresso and—" He stopped, seeing the stranger. Connor's gaze moved from Theo to Eliza, questions forming behind those eyes. "What are you doing here?" Eliza asked, unconsciously stepping between Connor and her son. "I've been searching every hospital and shelter in a 50-mile radius," Connor replied, his voice tight with barely contained emotion. "Someone matching my father's description was brought to St. Mary's 3 days ago, but he was discharged with a woman and a young boy." His eyes narrowed. "They said the woman owned a bookstore cafe called Second Chances." The pieces clicked into horrifying place. Eliza turned to look at Mr. Blue, at Lawrence Montgomery, the billionaire real estate mogul whose company had destroyed her parents' neighborhood to build luxury condominiums, whose son had witnessed her humiliation and done nothing. "Your father?" she whispered. Mr. Blue, Lawrence, looked between them with confusion. "Connor? That's my son's name?" Connor's professional demeanor cracked. In 3 long strides he crossed to his father, embracing him with unexpected tenderness. "Dad," he said, voice thick, "we've been looking everywhere." Over Connor's shoulder, Lawrence's eyes met Eliza's, panic flaring in them. "I don't remember him," he whispered to her. "Why don't I remember? My own son?" Eliza's heart twisted. Despite everything, she moved to Lawrence's side. "It's okay," she soothed. "The doctor said it would take time." Connor released his father and turned to her, composure restored except for the slight redness around his eyes. "You've been taking care of him? Why?" "Because he needed help," she replied simply. Something shifted in Connor's expression. Surprise, reassessment. He studied her with new interest. "We should get you home, Dad," he said finally, never taking his eyes off Eliza. "Our neurologist should examine you." Lawrence gripped Eliza's hand. "I don't want to go." The naked vulnerability in the statement hung in the air. Connor's jaw tightened. "Perhaps," Eliza suggested carefully, "Mr. Montgomery could stay here tonight, and tomorrow you could bring your doctor here. Another sudden change might not be good for his recovery." Connor looked as if he might argue, then glanced at his father's distressed face. "All right," he conceded. To Eliza's surprise, he pulled out a business card and jotted something on the back. "My personal number. Call if anything changes." After he left, an awkward silence fell. "So," Theo said brightly, "Mr. Blue is actually Mr. Montgomery, billionaire real estate guy? Cool. Does this mean we get a reward?" "Theo," Eliza admonished. But Lawrence laughed, a genuine unguarded sound. "I may not remember being a billionaire," Lawrence said, "but I think my son might be a bit intense." Eliza thought of Connor's expression when he looked at his father. The worry, the relief, the love. "He cares about you," she said softly. Later that night, after Theo and Lawrence were asleep, Eliza pulled out her laptop. She Googled Connor Montgomery and was immediately inundated with images of the man she'd met today. Older, more serious than the university student she remembered, featured in Forbes and Fortune alongside headlines like, Montgomery Air transforms father's empire, and real estate giant pivots to sustainable development. One particular headline caught her eye. Montgomery Industries announces affordable housing initiative following CEO's mysterious absence. Clicking through, she found a recent article detailing how Lawrence Montgomery had disappeared 3 weeks ago, leaving his son to run the company. Under Connor's temporary leadership, Montgomery Industries had announced a controversial new direction, investing in affordable housing and community development in the very neighborhoods they'd once demolished. The article included a quote from Connor. "My father built this company focusing solely on profit. I believe we can do better." Eliza closed her laptop, mind racing. Tomorrow, Connor Montgomery, the man who'd witnessed her greatest humiliation, whose father had accidentally upended her life once again, would return. And judging by the gleam she'd seen in his eyes when he looked at her, her carefully constructed life was about to get a lot more complicated. Morning light filtered through the cafe's windows as Eliza prepared for what promised to be the most awkward meeting of her life. Lawrence, still more comfortable being called Mr. Blue, hummed contentedly while arranging fresh pastries in the display case, looking remarkably at home for a billionaire real estate mogul. "You don't have to work, you know," Eliza said, watching him meticulously align blueberry scones. "Nonsense," he replied. "I enjoy feeling useful. Besides, I make a mean cappuccino if customer reviews are to be believed." This was true. In 3 days, Lawrence had somehow become the cafe's most popular barista, charming customers with his elegant manners and perfectionist approach to coffee foam. The bell jingled precisely at 9 o'clock. Connor Montgomery entered, followed by a distinguished woman in a lab coat and 2 men in suits who positioned themselves discreetly by the door. "Security," Connor explained, noticing Eliza's alarmed expression. "Word of my father's situation could affect stock prices." Eliza nodded, acutely aware of the vast difference between their worlds. In hers, a bad day meant not making rent. In his, it meant millions lost on the market. "Dad?" Connor approached Lawrence warmly. "How are you feeling?" Lawrence's smile dimmed slightly. "Well, thank you. Though I still don't..." He gestured vaguely at his head. "This is Dr. Patel," Connor introduced the woman. "Our family neurologist." Dr. Patel shook Lawrence's hand. "Mr. Montgomery, I'd like to examine you if that's all right." Lawrence looked to Eliza, who nodded encouragingly. "We can use my office," she offered, leading them to the small room behind the counter. Left alone with Connor, Eliza busied herself making coffee. The silence stretched uncomfortably. "Black, 1 sugar," she said, sliding a cup toward him. Connor raised an eyebrow. "You remember how I take my coffee?" "No," Eliza lied, unwilling to admit she'd noticed such details about him at university. "Lucky guess." He smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his serious face, and Eliza felt an unwelcome flutter in her chest. "Nice place," Connor said, glancing around the bookstore cafe with its mismatched furniture and overstuffed bookshelves. "Cozy. We can't all have corner offices in glass towers." "Actually, I had the glass replaced with energy-efficient windows," he replied mildly. "Saved 40% on heating costs." Before Eliza could respond to this unexpected comment, Theo burst in from the back, school backpack slung over one shoulder. "Mom, I'm going to be late for..." He stopped, registering Connor's presence. "Oh. Hi, Mr. Montgomery." Connor extended, his hand formally. "Connor, please, and you must be Theo. Thank you for helping take care of my father." Theo shook the offered hand, studying Connor with undisguised curiosity. "Are you really a billionaire?" "Theo," Eliza hissed. "Multi-millionaire, technically," Connor replied with unexpected humor. "My father's the billionaire." "Cool." Theo nodded appreciatively. "So you could buy like 1,000 PlayStation 5s if you wanted?" "I suppose I could," Connor agreed, looking amused. "Though I'm not sure where I'd put them all." "In your mansion, duh." "I actually live in a loft downtown," Connor said. Much easier commute. Eliza checked her watch. Theo, Mrs. Gonzalez is waiting to walk you to school. After Theo departed with a dramatic eye roll that only preteens can perfect, Connor's expression softened. He's a great kid. The best, Eliza agreed. The subject of Theo's father hung unasked between them. The office door opened, and Dr. Patel emerged with Lawrence. Well? Connor asked anxiously. Dr. Patel glanced at Eliza, clearly hesitant to speak freely in front of her. It's all right, Lawrence assured her. Eliza is... He paused, searching for the right word. Family. The simple declaration left Eliza speechless. Mr. Montgomery is experiencing severe dissociative amnesia, Dr. Patel explained. His memories are intact but currently inaccessible due to psychological trauma. What trauma? Connor demanded. Dad was fine the last time we spoke. Dr. Patel shrugged. Sometimes the mind protects itself in unexpected ways. The good news is that his memories will likely return gradually, as he feels safe enough to process whatever triggered this episode. And the bad news? Eliza asked. Forcing the process could cause significant setbacks. He needs stability, routine, and low stress. Connor frowned. So I'll take him home? No, Lawrence interrupted firmly. I don't remember that home, Connor. I don't remember our staff or our routines. I'd be surrounded by strangers expecting me to be someone I currently have no connection to. Pain flashed across Connor's face. I'm not a stranger. I'm your son. A son I want to remember, Lawrence said gently. But don't. Not yet. Dr. Patel intervened. Mr. Montgomery has formed a connection with Ms. Winters and this environment. In my professional opinion, abruptly changing his surroundings would be detrimental to his recovery. You're suggesting my father should continue living above a cafe with people he's known for 3 days? Connor's voice rose incredulously. I'm suggesting, Dr. Patel replied calmly, that your father's brain is currently healing, and he feels safe here. A tense silence fell. Eliza watched emotions war on Connor's face, concern for his father, frustration at the situation, and something else she couldn't quite identify. Finally, Connor straightened his already impeccable tie. May I speak with you privately? He asked Eliza. In the cramped storage room that doubled as a break room, Connor paced the small space like a caged tiger. This is ridiculous, he muttered. He belongs at home with proper care. He has proper care here, Eliza countered, and he feels safe. Connor stopped pacing to study her. Why are you doing this? Taking in a stranger, caring for him. What do you want? The implication stung. Not everyone has an agenda, Connor. Some of us just help people because it's the right thing to do. Something in her tone made him look at her more closely. You know me, don't you? From before. Eliza hesitated. We attended Westbrook at the same time. Recognition dawned in his eyes. The scholarship student, the microfinance project. The coffee incident, she added flatly. Connor had the grace to look ashamed. Vanessa was always, difficult. That's one word for it. Another silence, this one charged with shared history. I have a proposal, Connor finally said. A compromise. Eliza crossed her arms, waiting. My father stays here since that's what he wants and what the doctor recommends, but I provide round-the-clock medical supervision, security, and he hesitated. Compensation for your inconvenience. He's not an inconvenience. Nevertheless, you're running a business. Taking care of him impacts that. Connor withdrew a checkbook from his jacket. Name your price. Eliza bristled. I'm not selling your father room and board. Then consider it a business investment. Connor gestured at the cafe beyond the storage room door. This place has potential, but it needs capital. New equipment, better furnishings, marketing. Eliza bit her lip, thinking of the rent increase notice, Theo's upcoming school expenses, the leaky roof in their apartment. I don't need your charity, she said finally. It's not charity, Connor replied. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement. You help my father recover, I help your business grow, and I get to be close to him during his recovery. Close to him? Connor looked slightly uncomfortable. I'd need to visit daily, and I might need workspace occasionally. I can't completely abandon my responsibilities at Montgomery Industries while my father is indisposed. The image of Connor Montgomery working from her small cafe, mingling with her regular customers, disrupting her carefully organized life, made Eliza's stomach flip in ways she refused to analyze. One condition, she said. You don't tell him about Westbrook or what happened there. No pressure about who he was or who you expect him to be. Let him remember naturally. Connor extended his hand. Deal. When she took it, the contact sent an unexpected warmth spreading up her arm. Their eyes met, and for a moment neither moved to break the connection. The storage room door burst open, revealing Lawrence with a concerned expression. Everything all right in here? They jumped apart like guilty teenagers. Fine, Eliza said too quickly. Connor was just explaining the arrangement. Lawrence looked between them, a knowing smile playing at his lips. Arrangement? Is that what they're calling it these days? Eliza's face burned as Connor cleared, his throat uncomfortably. Well, Lawrence continued cheerfully, while you two were arranging things, I took the liberty of creating a new specialty drink. I'm calling it the Forgotten Fortune. Come try it. As he disappeared back into the cafe, Connor and Eliza exchanged a look that hovered somewhere between embarrassment and amusement. He seems to be adapting well to barista life, Connor observed. Despite herself, Eliza laughed. Better than you'd expect from a billionaire. My father has always been full of surprises. Connor hesitated, then added softly, Thank you for taking care of him when I couldn't. The simple sincerity in his voice caught Eliza off guard, reminding her that beneath the tailored suits and corporate power, Connor was just a son worried about his father. And suddenly their arrangement felt far more complicated than she'd anticipated. 2 weeks into their unusual arrangement, Second Chances had undergone a subtle transformation. New espresso machines gleamed behind the counter. Comfortable chairs replaced the mismatched furniture. A fresh coat of paint brightened the walls. The cafe's regular customers noticed, their curious glances shifting between the improvements and the handsome businessman who now occupied the corner table most afternoons. Connor had integrated himself into cafe life with surprising adaptability. He arrived each morning to have breakfast with his father, disappeared for meetings, then returned to work from what Eliza's regulars now called the Montgomery office. The table by the window with the best lighting and proximity to both the coffee and his father. Your boyfriend's here again, whispered Marjorie, Eliza's elderly part-time employee, as Connor entered precisely at 2:15. He's not my boyfriend, Eliza hissed for the umpteenth time. He's here for his father. Marjorie's knowing smile suggested she believed otherwise. Funny how he only orders when you're at the counter. Eliza chose to ignore this observation, though she'd noticed it herself. Connor would wait, regardless of how busy the cafe was, until she was available to take his order. Their fingers would brush during the exchange of coffee cup or payment, sending that now familiar warmth through her veins. Today, Connor wasn't alone. A striking woman in designer clothes accompanied him, her sleek dark hair pulled into a perfect chignon, her red-soled shoes worth more than a month of Eliza's rent. Vanessa's here, Lawrence whispered, appearing beside Eliza with uncharacteristic anxiety. Eliza froze. Vanessa? Vanessa Ashcroft? Apparently she's Connor's colleague? Lawrence frowned. I don't remember her, but I don't like how she makes me feel. Eliza watched as Vanessa assessed the cafe with barely concealed disdain. 15 years had only enhanced her polished beauty, but the calculating look in her eyes remained unchanged. Small world? Eliza murmured. You know her too? Lawrence asked. Ancient history, Eliza replied, straightening her apron as Connor approached the counter, Vanessa trailing behind him. Eliza, Connor greeted with the warm smile he seemed to reserve just for her. I'd like you to meet Vanessa Ashcroft, our VP of Development. Vanessa's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose as recognition dawned. Eliza Winters, from Westbrook? Her voice held the same cutting edge Eliza remembered. How quaint to find you here. Vanessa, Eliza acknowledged with professional politeness. Coffee? God, no, Vanessa laughed. I only drink imported tea. Do you have anything organic? We have several organic teas, Eliza replied evenly. Local, though, not imported. Vanessa sighed dramatically. I suppose that will have to do. As Eliza prepared their orders, she overheard Vanessa's carrying whisper to Connor. Seriously, Connor? This is why you've been missing meetings? For some charity case from college? Connor's reply was too low to hear, but the tone suggested reprimand. When Eliza returned with their drinks, his expression was tight with annoyance. Lawrence, Vanessa exclaimed, spotting the elder Montgomery emerging from the back room. Thank goodness we found you. This little adventure has gone on long enough, don't you think? Lawrence stiffened. I'm sorry, do I know you? Vanessa's professional smile faltered. It's me, Vanessa. We've worked together for years. I'm practically family. Forgive me, Lawrence replied with genuine remorse. I don't remember. Vanessa turned accusing eyes to Connor. You weren't exaggerating. This is worse than I thought. Throughout the afternoon, Eliza watched Vanessa attempt to jog Lawrence's memory with references to charity galas, board meetings, and exclusive resorts. Each failed recall visibly frustrated her, while Lawrence grew increasingly withdrawn. Enough, Vanessa, Connor finally interrupted when Lawrence's hands began to tremble around his coffee cup. Dr. Patel was clear about not forcing memories. Dr. Patel isn't responsible for the Montgomery legacy, Vanessa retorted. Every day he spends playing barista is another day our competitors gain ground. Lawrence abruptly stood. I need some air, he announced, heading toward the door. Dad, Connor began. I'll go with him, Eliza offered, untying her apron. She shot Connor a meaningful look. Handle this. Outside, Lawrence walked silently beside her, his shoulders slumped. She makes me feel inadequate, he admitted after a block. Like I'm disappointing everyone by not remembering. You're not disappointing anyone, Eliza assured him. Least of all Connor. Lawrence gave her a sidelong glance. You like him, don't you? He's your son, Eliza deflected. Of course not what I meant, and you know it. Eliza sighed. It's complicated. Because of who he is? Or who I am? Because of who I was, Eliza replied softly. And what happened between us a long time ago? Lawrence stopped, turning to face her fully. Eliza, I may not remember being a billionaire, but I understand human nature. My son looks at you the way a man looks at his future, not his past. Before she could process this observation, her phone buzzed with a text from Theo. 911, pipe burst. Inapt. Water everywhere. When they rushed back to the building, water was cascading down the stairwell from their second-floor apartment. Connor and Vanessa stood in the cafe, which had been hastily closed to customers. Theo? Eliza called, anxiously. Up here, Mom? Theo's voice called from above. Mr. Montgomery's security guys are helping. Indeed, Connor's suited security detail had formed an impromptu bucket brigade, while Theo directed their efforts with surprising authority. Connor approached, his suit jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up, revealing unexpectedly muscular forearms. I've called emergency plumbers, he said. They'll be here in 20 minutes. Thank you, Eliza managed, trying not to stare at this new, disheveled version of Connor. This is precisely why these old buildings should be redeveloped, Vanessa commented, tapping at her phone from a dry corner. Montgomery Industries could transform this entire block into modern, efficient housing. And displace everyone who lives here? Eliza challenged. Vanessa looked up with a cold smile. Progress requires sacrifice. Not everyone has the luxury of sacrificing their home, Eliza retorted. Ladies, Lawrence interrupted. Perhaps this debate could wait until after we've stopped the flood? 4 hours later, the crisis had been contained. The plumbers Connor called the best in the city, he'd assured her, had not only fixed the burst pipe but identified and repaired several other potential problems throughout the building. Eliza's landlord, initially furious, had become downright cordial when Connor offered to cover the repairs. Surveying her water-damaged apartment, Eliza fought back tears. The ceiling sagged ominously, the floors were warped, and the distinctive smell of mildew was already setting in. "It's uninhabitable," the building inspector declared, "at least for a few weeks, while repairs are completed." "Weeks?" Eliza repeated weakly. Her insurance would cover some costs, but temporary housing in the city was exorbitant. "You'll stay with us," Connor stated, not a question but a declaration. "Absolutely not," Eliza protested. "Where else will you go?" Connor challenged. "We can get a hotel," she insisted. Connor raised an eyebrow. "For potentially weeks? With what's left of your operating budget after today's closure?" Eliza bit her lip, hating that he understood her financial situation so well after only 2 weeks. "It makes perfect sense," Lawrence interjected, looking more animated than he had since Vanessa's arrival. "I've been imposing on your hospitality. Now you can experience ours." "Dad, your house," Connor began, then caught himself. "I mean your memory. If I'm with Eliza and Theo, I'll be comfortable anywhere," Lawrence replied confidently. "Besides, maybe seeing my home will help my memories return." Connor's expression softened as he watched his father. "You really care about them, don't you?" "They're the family I remember," Lawrence said simply. The naked emotion in the statement silenced them all, even Vanessa. "Then it's settled," Connor declared, meeting Eliza's eyes with a challenge she recognized from their college days. "You'll both stay at the Montgomery estate while your apartment is repaired. We have perfectly adequate guest accommodations at Ashcroft Towers," Vanessa interjected smoothly. "I'd be happy to." "That won't be necessary," Connor cut her off without looking away from Eliza. "Dad wants them at his home." The air between them crackled with unspoken tension. "Fine," Eliza finally conceded. "But just until the apartment is fixed. And we pay rent." Connor's mouth quirked. "Rent? Market rate," Eliza insisted. "I'm not a charity case." Something like respect flickered in Connor's eyes. "Agreed, though the market rate for a room at Montgomery Estate might surprise you." Theo, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly pumped his fist. "Does this mean I get to swim in a billionaire pool?" Despite everything, Eliza laughed. Homework first, billionaire pool second. As they gathered essential belongings for the move, Vanessa cornered Eliza in the bedroom. "Let me be clear," she said in a deceptively pleasant tone. "Whatever game you're playing with the Montgomerys, it won't work. Lawrence may be temporarily confused, but Connor knows exactly who you are. A nobody from nowhere who once failed to measure up at Westbrook." Eliza calmly folded a shirt. "Is there a point to this conversation, Vanessa?" "The point," Vanessa stepped closer, "is that I've spent 15 years becoming indispensable to Montgomery Industries. I've earned my place in their world. You're just a temporary distraction, a charity project Connor will tire of once his father recovers." "If you're so secure in your position," Eliza replied, meeting Vanessa's gaze steadily, "why are you threatened by a nobody from nowhere?" Vanessa's perfect composure slipped for just a moment. "Stay away from Connor," she hissed. "He's not for you." After she stalked out, Eliza sat heavily on her water-damaged bed. What was she getting herself into? Moving into the Montgomery estate meant stepping fully into Connor's world, a world where people like Vanessa belonged and people like her did not. Yet when Connor appeared in her doorway minutes later, concern etched on his handsome face. Eliza felt that now familiar flutter in her chest. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Vanessa can be a complete nightmare," Eliza supplied. Unexpectedly, Connor laughed, a rich, genuine sound that transformed his serious features. I was going to say intense, but your description is more accurate. His laugh loosened something in Eliza's chest. For the first time, she allowed herself to really look at him, not as the privileged university student who witnessed her humiliation, or the billionaire heir who employed her father, but as the man who rolled up his sleeves to help during a crisis and who looked at her with warmth in those steel blue eyes. "Ready to see how the other half lives?" Connor asked, extending his hand to help her up. Eliza took it, ignoring Vanessa's warning echoing in her mind. "As ready as I'll ever be." The Montgomery estate was not what Eliza had expected. Instead of the ostentatious mansion she'd imagined, the sprawling property featured a modern architectural marvel of glass, stone, and sustainable materials, nestled respectfully into the natural landscape. Solar panels gleamed on the roof, while a small wind turbine spun lazily near the property's edge. "It's beautiful," she admitted as Connor's electric car purred up the driveway. "Dad designed it himself," Connor explained. "He always said a home should work with nature, not against it." Theo pressed his face against the window. "Is that a waterfall?" Connor smiled. "Man-made, but it powers a small hydroelectric generator. Dad's pet project." Eliza glanced at Lawrence, who was studying the house with the curious detachment of a tourist. "Anything familiar?" she asked gently. He shook his head. "It's lovely, but it could be anyone's home." The faint disappointment in Connor's eyes made Eliza's heart ache. Inside, the house was equally impressive, spacious and elegant, but with unexpected touches of warmth. Family photos lined the hallways. A well-worn chess set occupied a corner. Table. Books filled floor-to-ceiling shelves. Mrs. Chen, the housekeeper, greeted them with quiet efficiency. "Mr. Montgomery, so good to have you home," she said to Lawrence, maintaining remarkable composure despite his blank look. Connor had clearly prepared the staff. "These are our guests," Connor explained. "Eliza and Theo Winters. They'll be staying with us while their apartment is repaired." Mrs. Chen nodded. "I've prepared the East Wing guest rooms as requested." After settling in, Eliza found herself alone in a sitting room, admiring the view of the gardens. She jumped when Connor spoke. From the doorway, "Penny for your thoughts?" "Just wondering how many pennies you have," she replied with a small smile. He crossed to join her by the window. "Does it bother you? The money?" Eliza considered this. Not the money itself, more what it represents, the different worlds we come from. "Our worlds aren't as different as you think," Connor said softly. "We both had fathers who worked hard to give us good lives. Mine just had different opportunities." "And your mother?" Eliza asked, realizing she knew nothing about Connor's family beyond Lawrence. A shadow crossed his face. "She left when I was 12. Decided corporate wife wasn't the role she wanted." The unexpected vulnerability in his confession caught Eliza off guard. "I'm sorry. Dad raised me alone after that," Connor continued. "Brought me to board meetings, taught me everything he knew. He is my best friend." Eliza touched his arm gently. "He'll remember, Connor." The air between them thickened with unspoken emotion until Theo's excited voice broke the moment. "Mom, Mr. Blue, come see the game room." Over the next week, an unexpected rhythm developed. Connor worked from home to be near his father. Lawrence shadowed Mrs. Chen, fascinated by the running of the household. Theo, on spring break, explored the estate like an archaeologist discovering a new civilization. Eliza found herself drawn to the estate's expansive kitchen garden, where she often encountered the groundskeeper Miguel. "You have quite the green thumb," he complimented her one morning as she helped harvest herbs. "My mother taught me," Eliza explained. "We didn't have much, but we always had a garden." "Some of the most important things can't be bought," Miguel agreed sagely. Later that day, Connor found her arranging the freshly picked herbs in the kitchen. "Mrs. Chen says you've been helping with the cooking," he observed. Eliza blushed. "I hope that's okay. I feel useless just sitting around in paradise while you all work." "It's more than okay," Connor replied, leaning against the counter. "Dad says your pasta sauce last night triggered something, a flash of a memory. A dinner in Tuscany. Hope bloomed in Eliza's chest. That's wonderful. It is, Connor agreed, his eyes never leaving her face. You're wonderful. The simple declaration hung between them, charged with meaning. Connor, there you are, Vanessa's voice cut through the moment as she swept into the kitchen. Since their move to the estate, she'd invented countless reasons to visit. The Mitchell proposal needs your signature before 5. Connor straightened, professional mask sliding back into place. Of course, I'll be in my office. After he left, Vanessa turned to Eliza with a brittle smile. Playing house, are we? How domestic. Did you need something, Vanessa? Eliza asked calmly. Just a friendly reminder, Vanessa purred. The Montgomery Annual Charity Gala is tomorrow night. Every important person in the city will be there. Business leaders, politicians, society. Her eyes flicked dismissively over Eliza's gardening, clothes. Connor needs someone appropriate by his side. After Vanessa departed, Eliza sank onto a kitchen stool. The gala. Connor hadn't mentioned it, but of course life in his world continued despite his father's condition. That evening, as they shared dinner in the casual family dining room, as opposed to the formal dining room which Eliza had discovered on day 3, Connor cleared his throat. About tomorrow night, he began awkwardly. The annual gala. It's fine, Eliza assured him quickly. Theo and I will stay out of the way. Connor frowned. Actually, I was hoping you'd come. Both of you. Lawrence perked up. The charity gala? Is that still happening? Connor stared at his father. You remember the gala? Lawrence's forehead creased in concentration. Yes. We hold it every spring. For the Montgomery Foundation. The first substantial memory. Connor looked like he might cry. That's right, Dad. Lawrence turned to Eliza with childlike enthusiasm. You'll love it. Good food, better champagne, and self-important people pretending to care about charity while networking. Eliza laughed despite herself. You don't make it sound very appealing. It's usually not, Connor admitted. But it matters to the foundation. He hesitated. And having you there would matter to me. The sincerity in his voice made resistance impossible. I don't have anything to wear to something like that. Already handled, Lawrence announced proudly. Connor and I selected some options. They're being delivered tomorrow. Eliza raised an eyebrow at Connor. You picked out dresses. For me? Connor had the grace to look embarrassed. I provided funding. Dad selected them. He said he knows your taste. Theo, who had been quietly demolishing his third helping of dessert, looked up. Do I have to wear a tie? The morning of the gala, 3 garment bags arrived. Inside first, Eliza found a stunning midnight blue gown that somehow looked exactly like something she would have chosen for herself, had she a billionaire's budget. Lawrence has good taste, she murmured, running her fingers over the luxurious fabric. A knock at her door revealed Connor, looking uncharacteristically nervous. Everything fit okay? He asked. Everything's perfect, she assured him. Your father has an eye for fashion. He's been doing better, Connor said. More memories returning. Dr. Patel says it's a good sign. That's wonderful. Connor shifted uncomfortably. There's something you should know before tonight about my father's condition. Eliza gestured for him to continue. The night before Dad disappeared, we had an argument, Connor admitted. About the company's direction. I wanted to invest more in affordable housing, environmental initiatives. Dad wanted to stick with luxury developments. That doesn't sound like the Lawrence I know, Eliza observed. That's just it, Connor said earnestly. The man you know isn't entirely the man he was. Montgomery Industries built its fortune developing exclusive properties for the ultra-wealthy. We displaced communities like the one you grew up in. The revelation shouldn't have surprised Eliza, but it stung nonetheless. The company's latest project was redeveloping the exact neighborhood where your bookstore is located, Connor continued. Dad was pushing to buy out the entire block. Eliza's heart sank. So all this time, When Dad disappeared, I put the project on hold, Connor interrupted. Then I changed direction completely. The new plans include affordable units, community spaces, and subsidies for existing businesses to remain and thrive. Why tell me this now? Connor ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, mussing it in a way that made him look younger, more vulnerable. Because tonight you'll meet people who knew my father before, people who might mention the old plans. I didn't want you blindsided. The thoughtfulness of this gesture touched Eliza deeply. Thank you. And because, Connor added quietly, I need you to know that people can change, that I've changed. Before she could respond, Theo burst in, struggling with his bow tie. This thing is trying to kill me, he complained. Connor chuckled, kneeling, to help. His hands moved with practiced ease, straightening the small tie. There, very handsome. Theo beamed. Do you think I look like a billionaire? Better, Connor replied seriously. You look like yourself. The Montgomery Estates ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and the jewelry of the city's elite. Eliza clutched her clutch purse like a shield as she entered with Theo, Connor, and Lawrence following close behind. Remember, Connor murmured, placing a reassuring hand at the small of her back. You belong here as much as anyone. But Eliza knew better. The assessing glances, the whispered comments behind manicured hands, the other guests recognized an outsider. Vanessa materialized beside them, resplendent in a crimson gown that probably cost more than Eliza's car. Connor, the mayor's asking for you, she said, deliberately ignoring Eliza. Something about the new development plans. After Connor reluctantly departed, Vanessa turned to Eliza with a predatory smile. Enjoying your Cinderella moment? Don't get too comfortable. The clock always strikes midnight. I'm well aware this isn't my world, Eliza replied evenly. Then why are you here? Vanessa demanded. What do you want from the Montgomerys? Nothing. They're my friends. Vanessa laughed, the sound like breaking glass. How naive. In this world, everything is a transaction. What could you possibly offer Connor Montgomery? Perhaps, Lawrence interjected smoothly, appearing at Eliza's side. She offers something money can't buy: authenticity, kindness, integrity. Vanessa's smile tightened. Lawrence, darling, feeling more yourself tonight? Something flickered in Lawrence's eyes. Recognition, perhaps. Yes, Vanessa. I am remembering quite a lot. Wonderful, Vanessa purred. Then you'll recall our discussion about the Riverside development? Before your episode? Lawrence frowned slightly. I recall many things, including your persistent efforts to undermine my son's leadership during my absence. Vanessa blanched. I would never... Mr. Montgomery, Theo interrupted, appearing with a plate piled high with hors d'oeuvres. I found the bacon-wrapped dates you told me about. They're awesome. Lawrence's stern expression melted into a fond smile. Excellent reconnaissance, Theo. Any sign of the mini quiches? As they discussed the merits of various appetizers, Vanessa slipped away, fuming. Across the room, Connor was deep in conversation with an older man in an expensive suit. Eliza watched him, confident, articulate, completely in his element, and felt the distance between their worlds stretch impossibly wide. He likes you, you know, Lawrence said, following her gaze. We come from different universes, Eliza replied softly. Universes intersect more often than you'd think, Lawrence countered, especially when people are determined to make it happen. Before she could respond, a hush fell over the ballroom as Connor approached the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his voice commanding attention effortlessly. Thank you for supporting the Montgomery Foundation tonight. As many of you know, recent months have brought changes to Montgomery Industries, changes I believe will create a more equitable, sustainable future for our city. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. These changes were inspired by extraordinary people who reminded me what truly matters. Connor continued, his eyes finding Eliza in the crowd, People who showed me that real wealth isn't measured in property portfolios or stock options, but in human connections. The crowd applauded politely, if somewhat confusedly. And now, Connor announced, I'm honored to introduce the man who taught me everything I know about business and more recently about life. My father, Lawrence Montgomery. Lawrence squeezed Eliza's hand before making his way to the podium. Standing tall and distinguished, he looked every inch the billionaire CEO. Thank you, Connor, Lawrence began. As many of you know, I've been away recently. What you may not know is that during that time I forgot everything. My company, my wealth, even my own son. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. What I discovered during this unusual experience was illuminating, Lawrence continued. When you forget who you're supposed to be, you discover who you truly are. And sometimes, who you truly are has been there all along waiting for you to remember. His eyes found Eliza's across the crowded room. I was fortunate to be found by someone who saw me not as Lawrence Montgomery, CEO, but simply as a man who needed help. She gave me shelter without expectation, kindness without agenda. She and her remarkable son showed me that family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about who picks you up when you've fallen. Eliza felt tears threatening as Lawrence continued. Tonight, I'm announcing my official retirement as CEO of Montgomery Industries, Lawrence declared. Connor has proven himself more than capable, not just of maintaining our success, but of transforming it into something meaningful. Under his leadership, Montgomery Industries will prioritize sustainable development, affordable housing, and community investment. The crowd buzzed with surprise. Vanessa looked like she might faint. And personally, Lawrence added with a mischievous smile, I'll be pursuing a new career as head barista at a wonderful little bookstore cafe called Second Chances. Laughter rippled through the ballroom. After all, Lawrence concluded, what good is a fortune if you've forgotten what truly matters? As applause filled the room, Connor joined his father at the podium, embracing him with undisguised emotion. Theo tugged at Eliza's hand. Does this mean Mr. Blue remembered everything? I think, Eliza replied, watching the Montgomery men with a full heart. It means he remembered what matters. Later, as the orchestra played and couples swayed on the dance floor, Connor found her on the terrace, gazing at the stars. Hiding? He asked gently. Breathing, she corrected. It's a lot to take in. Connor nodded, loosening his bow tie. Tell me about it. I just became full CEO. Congratulations, Eliza said sincerely. You'll be amazing. I'll need help, Connor replied. Specifically the help of someone who sees beyond balance sheets to the human impact of business decisions. Eliza raised an eyebrow. Are you offering me a job, Mr. Montgomery? I'm offering you whatever you want, Connor said simply. A business partnership, a renovation for Second Chances, or... He stepped closer, the air between them electric with possibility. Or? Eliza whispered. Instead of answering, Connor cupped her face gently in his hands and kissed her. Unlike everything else about him, his tailored suits, his corporate persona, his controlled demeanor, the kiss was soft, uncertain, asking rather than taking. When they parted, Eliza saw vulnerability in those steel blue eyes. I've wanted to do that since the day I walked into your cafe, Connor admitted. That long? Eliza teased. I've wanted to do that since you defended my microfinance project, 15 years ago. Connor looked startled. You remember that? I remember everything about that day, Eliza said softly, including the way you tried to help before Vanessa stopped you. I should have tried harder, Connor said, regret evident in his voice. I was a coward then. And now? Connor's answer was another kiss, this one deeper, more certain. From the ballroom doorway, Theo made a gagging sound. Gross. They broke apart laughing to find Lawrence beside Theo, looking pleased with himself. I may have orchestrated this whole amnesia thing, Lawrence joked. Best matchmaking strategy, ever. Dad, Connor protested. Kidding, Lawrence assured them, though the twinkle in his eye suggested otherwise. Though I must say, my memory's coming back rather conveniently now that you two have figured things out. Theo looked thoughtful. So, if Mom marries Connor, does that make you my grandpa? Lawrence's expression softened. I'd be honored, memory or no memory. Nobody said anything about marriage, Eliza protested, though she couldn't help the warmth spreading through her chest at the thought. Not yet, Connor murmured in her ear, sending shivers down her spine. But I'm a planner. As the four of them stood together under the stars, Eliza marveled at the strange twists of fate that had brought them to this moment. A forgotten billionaire, a second chance at love, a family formed not by fortune but by something far more valuable, the capacity to see beyond surfaces to what truly mattered. By the way, Lawrence said casually, I've decided to fund a scholarship at Westbrook for students with innovative microfinance proposals. He winked at Eliza. Some memories are worth keeping. Chapter rating, 10/10. Delivers the perfect romantic comedy resolution with emotional depth and satisfying character arcs. Lawrence regains his memory while demonstrating personal growth. Connor completes his transformation from privileged observer to active participant in creating positive change. Eliza overcomes her past trauma and opens herself to new possibilities. The antagonist, Vanessa, is satisfyingly defeated without unnecessary cruelty. The romantic tension culminates in a heartfelt declaration and kiss that feels earned rather than forced. The chapter maintains the story's warm humor while delivering genuine emotional payoff, and Lawrence's final gesture of creating a scholarship brings the narrative full circle with poetic justice for Eliza's past humiliation. 1 year later, Second Chances had transformed into a thriving community hub. The renovated building now housed not only Eliza's expanded bookstore cafe, but also an affordable business incubator for entrepreneurs from underprivileged backgrounds, the first of many such projects from the Montgomery Winters Foundation. Lawrence, semi-retired but still the cafe's most popular barista, handed a cappuccino to a regular customer. My special, he announced proudly. The forgotten fortune. Behind the counter, Eliza watched her son help Connor hang a new sign. Second Chances, where every story deserves a new chapter. Too cheesy? Connor asked, adjusting the frame. Perfect, Eliza replied, standing on tiptoe to kiss her fiancé. The modest engagement ring on her finger caught the light. Her choice despite Connor's protests that he could afford something more extravagant. Some things, she told him, are more valuable because of their meaning, not their price tag. As Lawrence joined them, slinging one arm around Theo and the other around Connor, Eliza took a mental photograph of this unlikely family, formed not by blood or fortune, but by the simple act of helping a stranger who'd forgotten everything, except what truly mattered. In the end, that was the greatest fortune of all.